Chapter 655, Impossible. The teenager sounded as if he had experienced many vicissitudes of life. Crossing his hands behind his back, he shook his head, sighed, and left the square. Emperor Wu didn't know what to say. Rubbing his chin, he murmured to himself, would Feng Wu be an ideal match for my son? It was too great a matter for the chief steward to offer any opinion on it. Meanwhile, Feng Wu was dealing with Mu Yaoyao and Duan Qiuling. Look! It says in the agreement that you have to be accepted by Imperial College. Ha ha ha, Feng Wu, are you still going to bet? Mu Yaoyao had long wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth and her eyes looked like they were spitting fire. She knew better than anyone else that Feng Wu was a cripple without any trace of spiritual essence. The girl thought she could pass the physical tryout. In her dreams, Feng Wu darted a casual look at Mu Yaoyao. You know, I'll say yes if you want to revoke that bet now. Revoke? Mu Yaoyao's eyes lit up. Feng Wu had to be scared. She wanted to cancel the bet. She had no confidence in herself at all. That was why she had made that suggestion. Mu Yaoyao cracked up inwardly. Feng Wu, do you remember how you wouldn't cut me any slack just then? Now that things were turning against her, she wanted out. No. We won't. Mu Yaoyao said without hesitation. Feng Wu frowned. Are you sure? This is your one chance. Ha 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 ha. Feng Wu, you're only saying that because you know you can't get into Imperial College. Ha 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 ha. I'm going to stick with my bet and I'll be laughing when I cut your head off. Mu Yaoyao's eyes flickered, satisfied with her impending revenge. Feng Wu looked at Duan Qiuling and Yi Yifei. Those two had made a bet with Chaoga. Yi Yifei took a deep breath. Can I cancel mine? All eyes were on Yi Yifei right away. Yi Yifei said, I don't have that many grudges against Duan Chaoga and it's really not worth losing an arm over. So, can I revoke my bet? More importantly, Yi Yifei had noticed that Duan Chaoga was a level 9 spiritual master already. The girl had only been a level 7 the last time they met, but she had made it to level 9 in no time. That was so scary. After everything that had happened, Yi Yifei wavered. Feng Wu let Chaoga make her own decision. Chaoga snorted. That's very smart of you. Well, you get to keep your arm for now. Shen then turned to Duan Qiuling. What about you? Duan Qiuling sneered. You really think you can get in? Of course I'm not going to give up on such a great opportunity. I'm still in on the bet. You'll have to destroy your own cultivation if you lose and I'll do the same if I lose. Deal. Chaoga gave Feng Wu a nod. The crowd began to scatter. Lady Wang and Feng Lu exchanged looks, both had yet to recover from the shocking news. Slowly, they headed home. Mother. Do you think it's true? Feng Lu came back to herself and stared at Lady Wang in bewilderment. Feng Wu is first. She got the highest mark. That's impossible. Impossible. Like many people, Feng Lu had been convinced that Feng Wu would never pass the written exam. Lady Wang was in a foul mood. Feng Lu's eyes flickered with a jealous look in them. Feng Wu wasn't on that first list. Her name was added afterward. I don't know what she did, but she only got on the list at a later stage. I won't believe that she didn't cheat. Chapter 656, You'll regret this. Lady Wang smiled bitterly. Whatever. She can take all the exams she wants and it's her own business. Speaking of which, you better prepare yourself well, for after all, you were the last name on that previous list. The mother and daughter exchanged looks at those words. The 1000th. If Feng Lu had been the 1000th before, with Feng Wu added to the new list. Feng Lu panicked. She hadn't checked the list yet, for she had been so sure that she was on it. But now I'll go have a look. Feng Lu couldn't even speak properly. She rushed toward the bulletin board. By now, not many people were around the board, for everyone who needed to see it had done so. Feng Lu began to search for her name on the list. She couldn't find it. She couldn't find Feng Lu anywhere. It can't be. How can I not be on it? Feng Lu was so flustered that she didn't know what to do. Lady Wang took a deep breath and tried her best to calm down. Don't panic. Let's have a look again. I'm sure you missed it. Yes. Let's have another look. Mom, you start from the top and I'll start from the bottom. Sure. The mother and daughter began to search for Feng Lu's name again. But they still couldn't find it. How can this happen? Feng Lu panicked like a duck in a thunderstorm and she stood frozen on the spot, as if she had just been struck by a thunderbolt. In the Ministry of Official Personnel. Minister Feng, congratulations. Feng Yanfeng's colleagues cupped their fists at him. For what? Feng Yanfeng was bewildered. The daughter of the Feng family is a hit this time. She's the star of Imperial College's written exam, his colleagues explained. Imperial College? Written exam? The daughter of the Feng family? Feng Yanfeng thought about Feng Lu right away. Had Feng Lu outdone herself and broken her personal record? That daughter of your family got the highest score in the written exam. I think even His Royal Highness will think highly of such a talented candidate. Master Feng, you're sure to have a successful career. Feng Yanfeng was carried away by his own importance. Although he didn't think it possible, there didn't seem to be an alternative explanation. His daughter was a lucky girl after all. On his way back home, Feng Yanfeng couldn't stop smiling. Master Feng, a word, please. Lord Wuan went up to Feng Yanfeng. Feng Yanfeng was a little confused. Lord Wuan and himself weren't from the same circle. What was this about? Lord Wuan only explained the purpose of his invitation after he showed Feng Yanfeng into World Tower. The Ning family has a marriage proposal? Feng Yanfeng took the hint right away. Lord Wuan was from an old noble family in the imperial capital and was quite the character himself. Instead of showing up at court for duty, he spent his days indulging in petty hobbies. However, he was quite popular in the imperial capital's social circle and was considered a reliable person. That's right. Lord Wuan smiled. Ning Chenxi, the son of the Ning family, wants no one but Feng Lu as his wife. They came to me to act as the go-between. Old Feng, do you have a preferred date? I'll tell the Ning family to officially propose to your daughter. Feng Yanfeng was going to accept the offer, but he recalled the congratulations he had received earlier, which changed his mind. He said with a smile. Let's talk about it later, shall we? Lord Wuan frowned. He had brought the good news himself, and this man was still stalling. As a matter of fact, Lord Wuan had heard about Feng Lu's controversial reputation before, but Ning Chenxi was very persistent. Seeing Feng Yanfeng's reaction, Lord Wuan wasn't pleased. Chapter 657, Face-Slapping, Again. Master Feng, are you not satisfied with the Ning family in any way? Lord Wuan frowned. That wasn't very polite of Feng Yanfeng. Did he realize what kind of people the Ning family were? Ning Ziyuan was a high-ranking official who was in charge of a border region, and the family was connected to Northern Feng Mansion by marriage. The Feng family should be filled with gratitude that such a family would want their daughter's hand in marriage. Assuming heirs? What was this Feng Yanfeng thinking? Lord Wuan found Feng Yanfeng very ungrateful. Had this happened yesterday, with Lord Wuan acting as the matchmaker, Feng Yanfeng wouldn't even have blinked before saying yes. But not now, not after the news Feng Yanfeng had heard from his co-workers. Feng Lu was first in the written exam and His Royal Highness had a thing for her. That was incredible. Feng Yanfeng didn't think he was too greedy. All he wanted was for His Royal Highness to take Feng Lu in as his imperial concubine. That would be the best thing that could ever happen to the Feng family. That would be much better than becoming Ning Chenxi's official wife. That was why Feng Yanfeng was stalling. After turning Lord Wuan down, Feng Yanfeng returned home, still excited. He spotted Lady Wang and Feng Lu as soon as he walked in. Lu Er. Feng Yanfeng was delighted to see Feng Lu and he patted her on her head and shoulder. Good girl. You made me very proud today. We would have given all the resources to you if we knew you had such potential. We wouldn't have wasted everything on Feng Wu back then. Feng Lu stared at Feng Yanfeng in confusion. What was that about? Feng Yanfeng went on, gloating. Girls aren't as important as boys. Says who? My Lu Er outdid all those boys out there. Kiddo, keep up the good work and be first in the physical tryout, too. The corner of Feng Lu's mouth twitched and she exchanged looks with Lady Wang. Shit. This was a huge misunderstanding. Her father must have mistaken Feng Lu's accomplishment for hers. When he found out that Feng Lu didn't even get into the first 1,000 and wasn't qualified for the physical tryout. Would that give her father a heart attack when he found out? But how was she supposed to correct him? Feng Lu couldn't bring herself to say it. It just so happened that Feng Wu and Qiuling came back at that moment and were chatting cheerfully. Feng Yanfeng flared up as soon as he saw Feng Wu. Stop laughing. Feng Yanfeng glared at Feng Wu and cast a stern look at her. How can you even bring yourself to laugh at this point? Feng Wu looked at Feng Yanfeng in bewilderment. What had gotten into her uncle now? And she wasn't the only one wondering. The others were equally baffled. Putting a hand behind his back, Feng Yanfeng said in the most arrogant manner, Feng Wu, come here and congratulate your sister. Congratulate. Feng Lu. Feng Wu frowned. Feng Lu hadn't even gotten into the first 1,000. Was her uncle serious? Seeing the hesitant look on Feng Wu's face, Feng Yanfeng was annoyed. He snorted. Your sister outdid herself and gained such an achievement. As her sister, shouldn't you offer her your congratulations? Feng Lu's face twisted and she tugged at Feng Yanfeng's sleeve. Dad! Stop it! He was only humiliating her. Right, I forgot. You took the exam as well. How did you do? You failed, right? Feng Yanfeng said in resignation, well, it's normal for you to have failed. You're a cripple. I wouldn't have expected otherwise. Stop stalling and congratulate your sister now. She might run this clan one day and your family will be at her mercy. I'd try to get along well with her if I were you. Feng Yanfeng meant every word and thought he was justified in his behavior. But Feng Wu only found him ridiculous. Chapter 658, That's Too Much. Feng Lu buried her face in her hands. Dad! Stop! Stop it, please! Feng Yanfeng looked at Feng Lu in confusion. She didn't want to say anything, but with Feng Yanfeng babbling on, she couldn't stand it anymore, especially when Feng Wu was around. Feng Lu stomped her foot. Dad! It's her. She's the one who got the highest score. Not me. What? Feng Yanfeng was dazed on the spot, as if he had just been electrocuted. No way. She's first. How is that even possible? He wouldn't believe it even if someone put a knife to his throat. Feng Wu got the highest mark in the written exam. Feng Yanfeng stared at Feng Lu. Feng Lu nodded grumpily. Feng Yanfeng then turned to Lady Wang. Despite her reluctance, Lady Wang nodded as well. No, Feng Yanfeng took the blow hard. But she's useless. The girl you call useless was first in the written exam. Qiuling smirked. She would have long lost her temper if it wasn't for Feng Wu, who stopped her. What kind of uncle was this man? Had he lost his mind, asking Xiao Wu to fawn on Feng Lu? Feng Yanfeng looked embarrassed. Clearing his throat, he said, I got the facts mixed up, I guess. So, Feng Lu, what's your ranking? Feng Lu was speechless. What sort of father was he? Did he have to humiliate her like this in public? Seeing that Feng Lu wouldn't answer, Feng Yanfeng snapped, Your father asked you a question. Answer me. He needed to be saved from this embarrassment. But Feng Lu needed it more. She noticed the sneers Feng Wu and Qiuling gave her and she couldn't take it anymore. She turned around and stormed off. Where is that abominable girl going? Feng Yanfeng asked angrily. Lady Wang rolled her eyes. Anywhere is better than staying here and being humiliated by you. Lady Wang left after that as well. Feng Yanfeng's face turned livid. What did he do? He only asked Feng Lu about her exam result and she was giving him attitude. Had she forgotten that he was the head of the family? Mr. Feng, Qiuling said with a laugh, your daughter took the written exam, all right, but we searched the entire list and Feng Lu's name wasn't on it. Feng Yanfeng was astonished. Feng Wu was cracking up inwardly, but she still feigned a displeased tone. My uncle is upset enough. Don't add to his vexation. Let's go. She then dragged Qiuling away, but the latter reminded Feng Yanfeng before they left, Mr. Feng, I think Feng Lu should really come and apologize to Xiao Wu later and try to get along well with her. After all, this clan will depend on Xiao Wu one day. Qiuling threw everything Feng Yanfeng had said back at him. Feng Yanfeng's face was livid. His cheeks were blood red. Blue veins popped on his forehead. In Fallen Star Yard, ha ha ha, ha 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 ha, taking a piece of fruit Qiuling had cut for her, Qiuling guffawed as she ate. Oh God, that was so funny. The looks on the faces of Feng Lu, your aunt and your uncle. Qiuling patted her chest and stomped her foot, too excited to sit still. Feng Wu sighed in resignation. She snatched the fruit out of Qiuling's hand, fearing that she might choke on it. 5 minutes later, are you done laughing? Ha ha ha. 10 minutes passed. Feng Wu looked at Qiuling in resignation. Are you done laughing? Ha ha ha, that was just so funny. Chapter 659, Loaded with Honors. Half an hour later, Feng Wu looked at Qiuling in resignation. The girl had laughed until she couldn't sit up. Qiuling, rub my belly for me. Ouch, it hurts. I think I have cramps. Qiuling turned to Qiuling for help. Qiuling chuckled as she offered Qiuling a cup of Qiuling tea. Hey, Qiuling tea. Qiuling jumped to her feet at the smell, grabbed the cup, and poured the tea into her mouth in one go. Ouch, that's hot. Qiuling cried out, but went on drinking. Feng Wu looked at her in resignation. Slow down. The tea isn't going anywhere. Qiuling rolled her eyes at Feng Wu as she fanned her mouth with her hands. I know that, but it's Qiuling tea. How can I wait when something which smells this nice is around? Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Well, since I've passed the written exam, I need to go back home and show off now. After finishing her fruit, Qiuling was ready to leave. Feng Wu asked, are you sure you won't end up fighting with those people? Qiuling gloated. You'll see. She then returned home. By then, the news had gotten around and almost everyone had a copy of that list. And everyone was talking about it, from the court above to the masses below. The Duan Manor. Mrs. Duan almost had a nervous breakdown when she saw the list. That's impossible. I don't believe it. It shouldn't have happened. Mrs. Duan crumpled the paper into a ball. She was dumbfounded. Feng Wu is first. You've got to be kidding me. Mrs. Duan smirked at her husband. Feng Wu, the useless girl. She was known as Failure Wu. And she's first? This isn't happening. And second is Duan Qiuling. Seriously? Mrs. Duan rolled her eyes. Our Qiuling. Second? Master, can you believe this? Duan Hongyi didn't want to. But it was written on the list and he had no other choice. Maybe they outdid themselves. Duan Hongyi rubbed his chin. Ha! Mrs. Duan snorted. Someone who hands in blank answer sheets got full marks. Outdid is an understatement. What do you mean? They must have cheated. Mrs. Duan snorted. Rubbing his chin, Duan Hongyi was lost in his thoughts. Just then, Footsteps came from outside. Miss Chaoga is back. Duan Qiuling and Duan Qiaoyue rose to their feet in unison and both looked alarmed. Well, what a coincidence. You're all here. Chaoga smirked when she saw the family of four. Duan Qiuling sneered. Oh my, you're back. I thought you died out there. Chaoga snorted. You'd love that, wouldn't you? That's why you stopped Dad from saving me. You, Duan Qiuling glared at Chaoga. Chaoga snorted. Am I wrong? Did you try to look for me afterward? Chaoga sneered inwardly when she saw the astonished looks on their faces. Xiao Wu was right. She had to make them feel guilty. That way, she would have the moral high ground. You, Duan Qiuling pointed at Chaoga. How dare you come back? Why can't I come back? Chaoga gloated. I got the second highest score, of course I'd come back home, loaded with honors. You didn't even pass the written exam. How dare you disrespect me like this, telling me what to do? Chapter 660, You Jealous Losers. Duan Qiuling had spat out blood once earlier that day and Chaoga's sarcasm almost made her spit out blood again. Mrs. Duan wrung her handkerchief until it was nearly in shreds. Duan Chaoga. Is that how you talk to your sister? Chaoga scoffed at Mrs. Duan. Quit your lousy act. You've always wanted me dead. My sister. Don't make me laugh. Mrs. Duan was rendered speechless. She swore that dealing with Duan Chaoga had significantly shortened her lifespan. Duan Hongyi's face was livid and he jumped to his feet. Duan Chaoga, you think so highly of yourself, don't you? Chaoga grinned. Well, I got the second highest score, I can think as highly of myself as I want. Bite me. Mrs. Duan and her two daughters had bullied and framed Chaoga more times than she could count over the years, to the point that even Chaoga pitted herself. Seeing how pissed the three women were now, Chaoga felt so bold and elated. Her luck had turned after Xiao Wu returned. Xiao Wu had to be her lucky star. Chaoga came back today just to piss the three women off. Seeing their heaving chests and livid faces, Chaoga was so satisfied. You cheated. Duan Qiuling snorted. We know it. You cheated and I'm going to report you. Chaoga shrugged. With Xiao Wu around, no one could intimidate her. You can't answer a single question. You must have copied someone else's answers. It'll be so easy to prove. All they need to do is have you redo the exam. You'll be so dead. Really? I'm so scared. What are you waiting for? Chaoga wasn't worried at all. His Royal Highness and Mr. Liu monitored the exam themselves, and you're telling me that someone could have cheated during the exam? Go report me. Go report me now. I'd like to see you come back alive. Duan Hongyi cringed at the mention of Jun Linyuan. He only stared at Chaoga. How did you learn everything so quickly? Because I had a great teacher, Chaoga said proudly. A great teacher? Which teacher? Grand Secretary Feng, said Chaoga. Grand Secretary Feng had us memorize 1,000 books and read 10,000 more. According to the old master, we would get good grades if we remembered them all. Well, she hadn't remembered a single word, but Xiao Wu had. Grand Secretary Feng. Duan Hongyi cried out. Which Grand Secretary Feng? Is there another Grand Secretary Feng? The one that recently retired, obviously. As in Xian Yi's grandfather, Chaoga said casually. Grand Secretary Feng. Grand Secretary Feng. Grand Secretary Feng, Duan Hongyi clenched his fists. The great Grand Secretary Feng. The Grand Secretary Feng that used to be the head of all government officials. He had promoted more officials than one could count, and every single one of them was the head of a key department. If he could get on Grand Secretary Feng's wagon, his future would be so promising. At that thought, Duan Hongyi smacked his thigh. Well done, Chaoga. I'm so proud of you, my daughter. He then patted Chaoga on the shoulder. Kiddo, do you need anything? We'll do our best to support you. Qiuling was never the humble type and she said without hesitation, with the physical tryout coming, I still need a lot of cultivation resources. Of course. Duan Hongyi had always tried to form a connection with Grand Secretary Feng, but could never find an opportunity to meet the old man. He now saw Qiuling as his big breakthrough. He showed Qiuling to the family vault right away. Take whatever you need. The Duan family wasn't from a major clan, but they had accumulated a considerable amount of resources over the years. There were plenty of spiritual stones in the vault as well. Chapter 661, Baffled. Qiuling stuffed her pockets with spiritual stones without hesitation. Mrs. Duan was furious. Master, we don't know that Qiuling will get into Imperial College for sure. It'll be such a waste. Qiuling is going to join the physical tryout, too. She'll need her resources. Duan Hongyi shoved Mrs. Duan to the side. What do you know? You're just a woman. As important as getting into Imperial College was, to Duan Hongyi, the top priority now was to make Grand Secretary Feng's acquaintance. His immediate superior at the moment was the subordinate of an official, who in turn was the subordinate of Grand Secretary Feng's one subordinate. He wouldn't have to worry about not getting a promotion ever again if he could get Grand Secretary Feng as a patron. Qiuling promptly left home after raiding the family vault, saying that she was going to see Grand Secretary Feng. Yes, of course. Duan Hongyi nodded repeatedly. Mrs. Duan and her two daughters were infuriated. Meanwhile, Feng Wu was at home and chatting with her beautiful mother when a distinguished guest arrived at the Feng clan. An invitation from Lady Northern Feng. Lady Wang was elated. Lady Northern Feng was a member of the upper class in the social circle of the noble ladies of the imperial capital. Lady Wang had been trying to make her acquaintance, but could never get a chance. She had never expected Lady Northern Feng to send the Feng clan an invitation. Lady Wang's and Feng Lu's eyes lit up. Was Lady Northern Feng reaching out to the Feng clan? After the frustration which Feng Wu had brought them earlier that day, this invitation cheered Lady Wang and Feng Lu up. What was more, the invitation was brought by Granny Tao, Lady Northern Feng's personal maid, herself. You didn't have to go through so much trouble, Granny Tao, not to mention all these gifts. Lady Wang smiled broadly. Lady Wang knew about the Ning family's marriage proposal and the relationship between Lady Northern Feng and Mrs. Ning. She thought that Granny Tao was here to invite Feng Lu and herself over. Granny Tao scanned the room, then frowned. Is Miss Feng Lu the only young lady at home now? What was that supposed to mean? Lady Wang's heart sank. Do you mean? What about Miss Feng Wu? Is she at home? Despite Granny Tao's soft voice and kind smile, she gave off an air that was characteristic of servants from a noble house. The last thing one wanted to do was offend her. Feng Wu, Lady Wang felt her anger rise at the mention of that name. Of course, she would make sure that Feng Wu would never be part of something this great. Lady Wang answered with a smile, Xiao Wu has, probably gone off somewhere. Sorry about that, but she's such a stubborn and unruly child. There's nothing gentle about her and she's never home. We never know where to find her. That was Lady Wang's usual strategy. With a smile on her face and in a casual tone, she smeared Feng Wu's reputation. Granny Tao's face darkened right away. And she snatched that invitation back. Lady Wang's pupils contracted. What was that supposed to mean? Rising to her feet, Granny Tao said coldly, Lady Wang, I see that you're rather reluctant to take me to Miss Feng Wu. I'll show myself in, then. Lady Wang was baffled. What on earth was going on here? Wasn't Granny Tao supposed to be here for her? To discuss the marriage between Ning Chenxi and Feng Lu? How did Feng Wu have anything to do with that? Lady Wang's face was livid. As Lady Northern Feng's chief maid, Granny Tao could give Lady Wang all the attitude she wanted and there was nothing Lady Wang could do about it. Chapter 662, With Child. Grinding her teeth, Lady Wang sent Granny Gui out to keep an eye on Fallen Star Yard. It was where Granny Tao had gone. Feng Wu took a look at the invitation and was bewildered. Lady Northern Feng wants to see me. Why? Granny Tao showed much more enthusiasm toward Feng Wu. She smiled and said warmly, Miss Feng was first in the written exam and her ladyship is so happy for you. I was sent here to take you to her. Since Feng Wu had nothing better to do at the moment, she went off with Granny Tao. Outside, Granny Gui saw Feng Wu and Granny Tao come out of the yard together, with Granny Tao holding Feng Wu's arm in a deferential manner. Granny Gui's pupils contracted. She went to report to Lady Wang as soon as Feng Wu left. At the same time. Wretch! 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 Feng Lu retched into her handkerchief. Lady Wang frowned. What's wrong? You were fine this morning. Why are you sick all of a sudden? Is it a stomach problem? You lot, go fetch the doctor now. Feng Lu's nose puckered up. I've been like this for a few days. I feel sick all the time, I've lost my appetite, and I'm always sleepy. This is so annoying. Lady Wang looked stumped for a moment. She stared at Feng Lu, as if she had just been struck by lightning. Why you? What? Feng Lu's stomach lurched. You? How long have you been like this? Lady Wang had forgotten to blink. Just a few days. When did Feng Wu come back? Lady Wang grabbed Feng Lu's arm with a desperate look in her eyes. 2 months ago, I think. Then you and Lady Wang's eyes popped. You? What did I do? You're not with child, are you? Lady Wang stared at Feng Lu. Feng Lu. Eyes wide open, Feng Lu looked like she was in a trance as she stood dazed on the spot. She put a hand on her belly, could it really be? If that was the case. Oh God. Mum, what? What am I gonna do? Flustered, Feng Lu was at a loss. Tears welled up in her eyes. She was still so young and life had been smooth sailing for her. The news completely befuddled her. Lady Wang was no better. You fool. She jabbed Feng Lu's head with a finger. Feng Lu cried so hard that she couldn't say anything else. What's going on? Feng Yanfeng asked with a frown as he walked out of his study to find the mess outside. It suddenly occurred to him that starting from a short while ago, his wife didn't feel as pleasing as before. His voice made Lady Wang and Feng Lu jump. Lady Wang said in a hurry, nothing, really. Lu Er has an upset stomach, that's all. We've sent for the doctor already. An upset stomach? Feng Yanfeng was feeling patient today, which was very rare for him. Come here. Let me feel your pulse. No. Feng Lu shook her head repeatedly and tears rolled down her cheeks. Feng Yanfeng frowned. Why was the girl so touchy? Lady Wang hastily ushered Feng Yanfeng out of the room. The doctor is coming soon. Please don't let us keep you. Your official business is way more important. Seeing how badly Feng Lu was shaking, Feng Yanfeng frowned, put his hands behind his back, and grumpily left the room. Mum, what shall I do? If the doctor gets here and I'm really... I'd rather die. Feng Lu burst out crying. Lady Wang felt lightheaded at her daughter's wail and she thought she was going to pass out. Just then. Chapter 663, Ah Sun would be so lucky to have you as his wife. The doctor arrived. An idea struck Lady Wang. Go hide behind the bed curtain. Now! When the doctor came in, Feng Lu only stuck a hand out without showing her face. Dr. Gu was well known in the imperial capital for his abilities. He looked delighted after feeling the pulse. Madam, congratulations. The patient is with child. Feng Lu shuddered. Lady Wang drained of all color as well. What? With child? It was really happening. Lady Wang felt the room spin in front of her eyes and she almost fainted. Feng Lu was really pregnant. What should they do now? Behind the curtain, Feng Lu wished that she could pass out now. That way, she wouldn't have to face the humiliation. Dr. Gu gave Lady Wang a suspicious look. What a strange family. Other families would be thrilled to hear the news, but people here in the Feng manor looked as if the world was about to end. Lady Wang finally came back to herself. She squeezed out a smile, then asked a maid to see Dr. Gu out. Luckily, Granny Gue was as vigilant as ever. She stuffed a pouch filled with money into Dr. Gu's hand and said in a warning tone, "No one else is to know about this." Feng Lu broke down as soon as the doctor left and she burst into tears. Seeing Feng Lu's reaction, Lady Wang was at a loss over what to do. Feng Lu had no idea of the drama going on back home. At that moment, she was on her way to Northern Feng Mansion, led by Granny Tao. Lady Northern Feng came out to greet Feng Wu at the front gate. The lady was elated to see Feng Wu. She hurried to Feng Wu's side and grinned. "Kiddo, you've forgotten about me. You'd never come visit me if I didn't invite you over." Feng Wu only smiled. "I've been busy preparing for the written exam." Lady Northern Feng's eyes lit up and she patted Feng Wu on the shoulder. "You're amazing. You've surprised everyone. No one thought you'd apply for Imperial College, let alone get the highest score. That's so incredible." Feng Wu gave her a wry smile. "It was only the written exam." "Only the written exam? I was told that you're the first person ever to get full marks. Your name is going into the records." "Xiao Wu, how can you be so smart?" Lady Northern Feng looked Feng Wu up and down. The girl was pretty, smart, and adorable. She was perfect. The lady had wanted to set up a marriage agreement with Feng Wu when the latter was little, and that hope had never faded. Hence, she blurted out, "Xiao Wu, Ah Sun would be so lucky to have you as his wife." Feng Wu was sipping her tea and she spat everything out at those words. Cough, cough. Feng Wu put down the cup in a hurry and Qiuling quickly wiped her hands with a handkerchief. Lady Northern Feng gave her a wry smile. "I guess I don't have to ask anymore. You got so scared that you spat out your tea." Feng Wu waved her hands, looking flustered. "No, it's not that. Lady Feng, I'm not good enough for young Lord Feng." Lady Northern Feng's eyes lit up. "Are you saying that you'll marry Ah Sun when you think you're good enough for him?" Feng Wu coughed again. "Please don't take this the wrong way, Lady Feng, but the young lord is very picky. He'll never want me as his wife. Moreover, he's really stubborn and wants to find a girl himself. I'm afraid he'll become defiant if you try to make the decision for him." Recalling what a naughty little bugger Feng Sun was, Lady Northern Feng agreed with Feng Wu's reasoning. Chapter 664, This Girl is a Doctor Who Works Miracles? Lady Northern Feng raised an eyebrow at Feng Wu. "I'll beat about the bush a little and see how he feels about you." Feng Wu picked up her cup, trying to change the subject. She noticed something on Lady Northern Feng's face and frowned. Noticing Feng Wu's unblinking gaze, Lady Northern Feng felt disturbed. "Kiddo, why are you staring at me like that? It gives me the creeps." The frown on Feng Wu's face grew bigger. "Your ladyship, I need to speak to you in private." Lady Northern Feng was bewildered. Why was the girl so serious all of a sudden? Since she had always liked and trusted Feng Wu, the lady dismissed all the maids so that Granny Tao was the only servant left in the room. "Lady Feng, Feng Wu asked after some hesitation. "You sweat easily these days, don't you?" Lady Northern Feng was surprised by the question and Granny Tao answered for her immediately. "That's right. Her ladyship has been sweating profusely in her sleep in the past month, but she rarely sweats during the day." "Does she wake up at midnight every day, covered in a cold sweat?" "Yes. That's right." Lady Northern Feng nodded in a hurry. "That's exactly what's been going on. I've been jerking awake at midnight every day. I can always go back to sleep soon afterward, which is why I haven't thought much of it." "How did you know that?" Feng Wu smiled bitterly. Because midnight is when the yin and yang energies replace each other. Ha! Lady Northern Feng didn't know what that meant, but still felt concerned. Feng Wu then asked, "Do you occasionally feel dizzy when you get up in the morning these days? But the sensation goes away after a while?" "Yes." Lady Northern Feng nodded. "Xiao Wu, you're spot on. I felt that way several mornings in a row and I sent for doctors. But they only told me that I was plagued by weakness and needed more rest. That was all they could say about my case." Feng Wu examined Lady Northern Feng's face, then leaned over and whispered in her ear, "Has it been a while since you had your period?" Lady Northern Feng's eyes widened. How did you know that?" She looked at Granny Tao when she said that. Granny Tao smiled bitterly. "Your ladyship, I would never tell Miss Wu such a private matter." Lady Northern Feng believed her. She then turned her sharp gaze on Feng Wu. "How did you know that?" Her menstrual cycle was so private a matter that the only other person who knew about it was a female medicine refiner in the Medicine Refiners Guild. Feng Wu shrugged. "I can see it on your face." Lady Northern Feng wouldn't believe it. "You're too young to be able to do that." "I don't believe you." Feng Wu gave her a wry smile. "If you let me check your pulse, I can tell you how long it's been since you had your period." Lady Northern Feng stared at Feng Wu suspiciously. Feng Wu gave her another wry smile. "Your ladyship, I wouldn't have involved myself in such a matter if it wasn't for your kindness toward me." That convinced Lady Northern Feng. The girl was wise in the ways of the world and played it safe. Bringing up this matter was already against her philosophy. "All right." Lady Northern Feng raised her right arm and rested it on the table in front of Feng Wu. Even that female medicine refiner from the guild couldn't tell how long it had been since she had her period. How could Feng Wu know? Even Granny Tao wasn't so sure. Feng Wu narrowed her eyes as she checked the lady's pulse. She almost never actively tried to help a patient, but when she did, she would spare no effort. Chapter 665, The Most Exciting Moment. Lady Northern Feng and Granny Tao kept their gazes on Feng Wu, trying to decipher what the latter was thinking. In fact, both women had doubts. The girl was simply too young. Even the imperial physicians and the female medicine refiner from the guild didn't know what was wrong with the lady. What could this girl do? An elderly doctor with white hair and goatee looked a lot more trustworthy. Lady Northern Feng had no faith in Feng Wu. Neither did Granny Tao. They didn't expect Feng Wu to solve the problem. If they didn't have expectations, there would be no disappointment. Feng Wu drew back her hand in less than 5 minutes. That was way too soon. Lady Northern Feng shook her head inwardly. "What have you learned?" Lady Northern Feng asked indifferently. Feng Wu smiled wryly. "For years and 3 months. Am I right?" "What?" Lady Northern Feng stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. Feng Wu's answer was so accurate. "For years and 3 months" was right. Back then, Lady Northern Feng had thought that she was pregnant, which had terrified her. That was why she remembered the exact time. Feng Wu smiled. "Your pulse feels heavy and your tongue is pale and covered in a thin layer of fur. This indicates that you lack energy in your spleen and stomach, and that you're suffering from overactive phlegmatic fire. You must have lost your temper 4 years and 3 months ago. Am I right?" Lady Northern Feng nodded. Lost her temper would be an understatement. She had been so angry that she almost passed out. Seeing Lady Northern Feng confirm her diagnosis, Feng Wu went on. "And it was also during that time that you caught a cold, right?" "Yes." With the internal fire brought on by the anger and the evil energy introduced by the ailment, it was like a fire fanned by the wind. The evil energy made its way into your internal organs and the spleen and stomach were the first to be damaged, which in turn produced an excessive amount of phlegm. Because the ailment hasn't been properly treated for so long, it makes you dizzy. In fact, the cause of your disease lies in your spleen and stomach. Are you telling me that I have a problem with my spleen and stomach? Lady Northern Feng listened attentively at first, but she smiled bitterly when Feng Wu told her that her headache was caused by a problematic spleen and stomach. Yes. In order to cure you, we have to start working on your spleen and stomach. We'll focus on clearing your phlegm and replenishing your deficiencies while we're at it. The internal fire and evil energy will also be eliminated. Are you telling me that the ailment I had 4 years ago is still inside me? That I was never properly treated? Lady Northern Feng stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu said earnestly, yes. Not only weren't you cured, your health has been continuously affected by it. You may seem in good shape and only have occasional dizziness, but, if I'm guessing right, you were out in the wind today and had some saltwater fish. I'm afraid that you're going to get dizzy very soon. I can't eat saltwater fish. Of course not. Fish and meat will aggravate the dampness caused by the phlegm inside you. Your body can't handle it, Feng Wu said decisively. Lady Northern Feng wasn't fully convinced. Just then, footsteps came from outside. Lady Northern Feng frowned. She had left instructions that she wasn't to be disturbed. What was this about? There was a knock at the door. Lady Northern Feng darted a glance at Granny Tao, who went off to dismiss the unwelcome guest. My lady, it's your sister-in-law. It was none other than Mrs. Ning herself. The same Mrs. Ning that Feng Wu had saved and the mother of Ning Chenxi. Of course Lady Northern Feng couldn't chase Mrs. Ning away and she rose to her feet with a smile. Dear sister-in-law, what brings you here? Do come in. Mrs. Ning walked in with a few maids and grannies. She looked worn out as she smiled bitterly. What do you think? I'm here for Miss Feng Lu, of course. Chapter 666, The Truth. Mrs. Ning failed to notice Feng Wu and began to pour out her grievances right away. I know Miss Feng Lu is wonderful and smart and it wouldn't be so easy to get her family to agree. So, we went to Lord Wuan the other day and asked him to be our go-between. But the Feng family turned you down again? Lady Northern Feng frowned. Mrs. Ning smiled bitterly. That's right. Sir Feng only said, wait and see, and that was as good as a refusal. We've done everything there is to be done and showed as much sincerity as we could. But the Feng family just won't say yes. I even went to see Mrs. Feng the other day myself. Mrs. Ning sounded more aggrieved as she spoke. She gave me a similar reply, saying that her daughter was still young and that she'd like to have her around for a bit longer. I know she's still young, but we're not asking her to get married right away. An engagement will do. But the Feng family won't even say yes to that. Chenxi studied so hard for Imperial College's entrance exam this time and he got the 3rd highest score. Mrs. Ning was almost in tears. He stayed up late to study and lost so much weight from his hard work. He did all that just to get good grades to please the Feng family. Look, he was 3rd. And his cultivation achievement is way above average. I'm sure he'll do great. Lady Northern Feng smacked the table. And the Feng family still won't accept him? You don't say. Lord Wuan went to talk to Sir Feng himself about the marriage proposal, but Sir Feng turned him down. Mrs. Ning was distraught. Why is the Feng clan so proud? Is Chenxi ever going to be able to marry Miss Feng Lu? Lady Northern Feng snapped, forget about her, then. Feng Lu isn't a good choice, anyway. She doesn't get along with her sister and she's not particularly talented. I just don't understand what you and Chenxi see in her. Mrs. Ning gave her a wry smile. The thing with her sister is a big misunderstanding. Feng Wu, her sister, started it. One look and you'll know that the girl is a piece of work. She's always ready to stir things up. Feng Lu really is a nice girl. Lady Northern Feng. Feng Wu was right next to them and it was so inappropriate for her sister-in-law to say such things. As for her talent, Mrs. Ning smiled. I told you once. Miss Feng Lu is actually a genius doctor. Back when we were in Wanping Town, if it wasn't for her, my twins and myself would have all died. She saved me again afterward. She's an amazing girl. Lady Northern Feng almost lost her temper. Was this the same Feng Lu she knew? She snorted. If this Feng Lu really is as wonderful as you describe, why didn't she even pass the written exam? Well, Mrs. Ning didn't know what to say. Cough, cough. Standing behind them, Feng Wu felt so awkward. If she was guessing right, the savior Mrs. Ning was talking about was her. However, something must have gone wrong, for the lady had mistaken her for Feng Lu. But why did Ning Chenxi want to marry her? Feng Wu shook her head. She began to back away, hoping that she could sneak off before things got more awkward. However, Lady Northern Feng's palm landed on her shoulder. Xiao Wu, is it true? Feng Lu is secretly a genius doctor. Chapter 667, Who is the real Feng Lu? Lady Northern Feng's question attracted everyone's attention. Only then did Mrs. Ning see Feng Wu's face. So did Granny Chu beside her. Both women were shocked. They looked as if they had been struck by lightning. All words failed them. Feng Wu cleared her throat. Mrs. Ning, it's been a while. Mrs. Ning didn't know what to say. This was so embarrassing. She had poured out her grievances without checking the room first and had gone on and on about Feng Lu and the Feng clan. She hadn't tried to hide her dissatisfaction at all. But the person she was talking about had been here all along. And that person had saved her life before. Mrs. Ning was so embarrassed. Xiao Wu, you know my sister-in-law. Mrs. Ning was the sister of the Northern Feng general. Xiao Wu. Mrs. Ning looked at Lady Northern Feng in bewilderment. You called her Xiao Wu? That's right. Lady Northern Feng nodded. Isn't she Feng Lu? Mrs. Ning looked at Feng Wu in astonishment. You're Feng Lu and you saved me twice on our way back, didn't you? Mrs. Ning sounded desperate, for she had a very bad feeling about this. Lady Northern Feng was equally baffled. What Feng Lu? She's Feng Wu, the fifth daughter of the Feng clan. Feng Lu is the sixth daughter. How can you mistaken one for the other? Mrs. Ning was dazed on the spot. You're Feng Wu. Your name is Feng Wu. You really are Feng Wu. Mrs. Ning grabbed Feng Wu's wrist. You, tell me who you are. Feng Wu gave her a wry smile. Mrs. Ning, there must have been a misunderstanding. I've always been called Feng Wu and Feng Lu is my sister. You've met her before as well. She was with Feng Iran at the time. Mrs. Ning. My lady. My lady. Mrs. Ning shut her eyes and her knees buckled. She almost fainted. Luckily, Granny Chu reacted in time and stopped Mrs. Ning from falling. Seeing Mrs. Ning's reaction, most of the people in the room had guessed the truth. Granny Tao looked shaken. Did Mrs. Ning mistaken Miss Feng Lu for Miss Feng Wu? That is. Lady Northern Feng was equally bewildered. Feng Wu shook her head. Taking out a silver needle, she gave Mrs. Ning's philtrum a quick prick and Mrs. Ning opened her eyes shortly afterward. Mrs. Ning was furious after she regained her strength. I was misled. It's a huge misunderstanding. This is so. Lady Northern Feng patted her on the back. Calm down, calm down. Luckily, the damage is still under control. Although, how could this have happened? Mrs. Ning was so angry that her face had drained of all color. That day, Miss Feng Wu. She took Feng Wu's hand. After Miss Feng Wu left, Granny Chu went to ask for the name of the girl who saved my life, and that Feng Lu told her that it was Feng Lu who had helped me. That was why I've been mistaking Feng Lu for Miss Wu all along. And I wasn't the only one. That girl said the same thing to Chenxi. Hence, Mrs. Ning had gone straight to the Feng clan after they arrived at the imperial capital, asking for a marriage arrangement with Feng Lu. Lady Northern Feng said, so, you are all victims of that real Feng Lu. Mrs. Ning was almost in tears. It's so stupid of us. We've been trying so hard to marry Chensi to that Feng Lu. And we pulled so many strings. And as it turns out. Chapter 668, Do You Want the Truth? Infuriated, Mrs. Ning spat out a mouthful of blood. Lady Northern Feng was exasperated. Don't be so mad. It's fortunate that they didn't say yes. You would have even more to handle if they had agreed and you found out the truth afterward. Only then did Mrs. Ning calm down a little. But she was still very angry. How dare that girl try to play me like this? Feng II isn't someone she can mess with. Mrs. Ning used to be a handful herself before she got married. Lady Northern Feng smiled. Miss Feng Lu would have a very hard time after this. Feng Wu shook her head. She had no idea that Feng Lu could be so reckless. However, it had been Feng Lu's decision, and Feng Lu would have to face Mrs. Ning's wrath herself. Seeing that Mrs. Ning was alright, Feng Wu asked for permission to leave. Fearing that keeping Feng Wu here would embarrass her even more, Lady Northern Feng let her go back home. Feng Lu. There will be consequences. I won't let her off so easily. Mrs. Ning said between gritted teeth as she clasped Lady Northern Feng's hand. Alright, alright. Lady Northern Feng then asked Mrs. Ning to tell her what happened on the way back to the imperial capital. Mrs. Ning told her in detail. She had told Lady Northern Feng once before, but the lady's mind had wandered off, because Mrs. Ning had been talking about Feng Lu, whom Lady Northern Feng didn't like. But it was different this time. The story was about Feng Wu and Lady Northern Feng hung on to every word. What? She saved you twice. And she helped the twins as well? Lady Northern Feng was surprised. That's right. Xiao Wu is an incredible doctor. Young Master Ba of Wanping Town said that I was beyond saving and that they should prepare for my funeral, but Miss Wu wouldn't give up. She brought me back from the brink of death. Young Master Ba is old Master Ba's grandson, that old Master Ba. Mrs. Ning sighed with emotion. Old Master Ba. Everyone in the Junmu Empire knew the name of that medicine refiner. Lady Northern Feng and Granny Tao exchanged looks. So, they could trust Xiao Wu's medical skills, after all. Then, Lady Tang's spy poisoned me and I almost died. Miss Wu saved me again. Her skills are truly unmatched. She's that good? Lady Northern Feng cried out in surprise. She's that good? I didn't know that. Little Feng Wu has always been ignored or bullied at home. Where did she learn all that? Xiao Wu is having a hard time at home. Mrs. Ning took Lady Northern Feng's hand, her eyes flickering. Lady Northern Feng nodded. That's right. After what happened 5 years ago, her family members are either crippled or weak. They've been through so much. As far as I know, they've struggled quite a bit. Mrs. Ning tightened her grip. Sister-in-law, help me. You have to help me this time. What? We've been mistaking Feng Lu for Feng Wu the whole time, which is why I've been trying to get Chensi engaged to Feng Lu. But now, I'm going to ask for a marriage agreement with Feng Wu. Mrs. Ning was excited. We want to take care of Xiao Wu. I promise we'll be very nice to her. Sister-in-law, please help me. Marry Feng Wu to Ning Chensi. Lady Northern Feng didn't like the sound of that at all. I'm afraid not. But why? Mrs. Ning asked. Lady Northern Feng looked at Mrs. Ning. My dear sister-in-law, do you want the truth? Chapter 669, but... Mrs. Ning said eagerly, of course I want to hear the truth. Please tell me. Lady Northern Feng cleared her throat. Sweetheart, you know I always speak my mind and never sugarcoat things. Yes. I'm going to be straightforward with you, then. Sister-in-law, just say it, Mrs. Ning urged her. I offered a marriage proposal to Xiao Wu on Ah Sun's behalf before you arrived. What? Mrs. Ning almost jumped to her feet. As Northern Feng General's only child, Feng Sun was the sole heir to Northern Feng Mansion. Could he take Feng Wu as his wife? Lady Northern Feng asked, "Do you think that Xiao Wu would be marrying above her station?" After some hesitation, Mrs. Ning nodded. After all, Xiao Wu can't cultivate anymore. I've always wanted her as a daughter-in-law, ever since she was little, and I haven't changed my mind. I'd really love for Asun to marry her. The girl is impeccable in her appearance, temperament, wisdom, talent. You name it. Even when she's lost her cultivation ability, she still got the highest score in the written exam. Lady Northern Feng looked at Mrs. Ning. You said that Chenxi worked from dawn to dusk to prepare for the exam and he got the third highest score. He got 250, if I remember correctly. Mrs. Ning nodded. Lady Northern Feng said, but little Feng Wu got 300. Full marks. Mrs. Ning was stunned. Really? Really? Her answer sheets were posted on the bulletin board and I went to read them myself. It was perfection itself. Lady Northern Feng said in amazement. As a straight D student, she had always admired curve wreckers like Feng Wu. Mrs. Ning was speechless. The girl didn't think my Asun was good enough for her. As for Ning Chenxi, Lady Northern Feng smiled wryly. I really think you should give up on the idea. Mrs. Ning was speechless. That same night, Lady Northern Feng felt normal when she went to bed, but at midnight her clothes were soaked with cold sweat. And her head was pounding. It hurts. Granny Tao was startled. Miss Feng Wu had predicted that the effects of her ladyship's ailment would show up soon, but they didn't expect it to be this soon. My lady, my lady. Hearing the noise, Feng Sun rushed out of his own courtyard. Mom! Feng Sun took Lady Northern Feng's hands. I'll go fetch an imperial physician. Hang in there. Face pale, Lady Northern Feng was drenched in cold sweat, but she wouldn't let go of Feng Sun's hands. Xiao Wu. Xiao Wu. Feng Sun was worried sick and looked at Granny Tao in confusion. Granny Tao said hastily, please go fetch Miss Feng Wu. She knows what to do. She can help her ladyship. Hurry up. Feng Sun had seen what Feng Wu could do with her medical skills. Mrs. Ning's case had been an excellent demonstration. No problem. I'll go get her now. Without hesitation, Feng Sun dashed off. He ran as fast as he could. Feng Wu hadn't gone to bed yet. Instead, she was boiling some herbal medicine. Feng Wu had bought the necessary ingredients from a herbal medicine shop on her way back home from Northern Feng Mansion. She had proceeded to boil them right away. Bang! Feng Sun rushed in, grabbed Feng Wu's arm, and tried to drag her away. Hey, wait! Feng Wu was still working on the medicine. She fetched a bottle, poured the liquid in, then handed it to Feng Sun. What's this? The medicine to help your mother, said Feng Wu. Divide this into 3 equal portions and feed each one to her every 2 hours. I'll check up on her tomorrow morning. But I examined her this afternoon. This will work on her, Feng Wu said earnestly. Chapter 670, Carrying Qiuling. Feng Wu looked so trustworthy. Feng Sun stared at her for a minute before he gave a nod. He then left with the medicine. Miss, are you not going with him? Are you sure they'll be all right? Qiuling was concerned. After all, the patient was Lady Northern Feng. The medicine will solve her problem. Feng Wu was very confident. In fact, Feng Wu was too busy to leave home. She was designing a formation. Since Grand Secretary Feng had given her the property next door, Feng Wu decided that she would make full use of the lode underground. Dig the spiritual stones out? That didn't seem like the most ideal choice. Instead, Feng Wu decided that she would build a cultivation formation on top of that lode. With her current capability, she could easily build a Grandmaster-level essence-gathering formation. With it, Xiaoqi, Qiuling, and the others would be able to get double the results with half the work. After studying the terrain, Feng Wu set out to build a small immortal Tai formation. Thus, Feng Wu spent the whole night focusing on drawing out the formation. She had to be very precise with her strokes. Qiuling bustled in and out of the room, delivering Qiuling tea and hot towels to her mistress. Feng Wu was consuming an abundant amount of spiritual essence while she drew the diagram, which made her sweat profusely. The sweat had to be wiped off before it dripped down. The drawing would be ruined if even one drop of sweat fell on it. Feng Wu had left the instruction before she started working. Qiuling looked at her mistress. Miss Wu could be carefree and light-hearted at times, and she never hesitated to pretend or show weakness when necessary. However, when she put her mind to something, she held nothing back. Right now, Feng Wu seemed to be in an enigmatic, indescribable state. She kept adding more to the drawing, and with each stroke, more spiritual essence was consumed. She had long drained her spiritual essence and was only able to hold on because of top-grade spiritual stones and Qiuling tea. One after another, the top-grade spiritual stones shattered into little pieces, and no matter how many cups of Qiuling tea Qiuling brought in, Feng Wu downed them all. Qiuling looked at Feng Wu's pale lips and the cold sweat on her forehead. Qiuling worried about her mistress so much. But she knew better than to disturb Feng Wu or try to talk her out of it. In moments like this, Feng Wu was the most stubborn. She would lose her temper if anyone tried to interrupt her when she was working. Qiuling had no idea how long it would take Feng Wu to finish. Leaning against the doorframe, Qiuling looked up at the silver moon and kept Feng Wu company. Soon, it was deep into the night. Then dawn came and the eastern sky began to light up. The first ray of sunlight painted the sky orange. Only then did Feng Wu put down her pen. Miss. Qiuling already had a towel ready, which had been heated to the right temperature to soothe Feng Wu's fatigue. Feng Wu put the hot towel over her face. The steam felt very comfortable. She glanced at Qiuling. You soaked the towel in hot Qiuling tea. What a waste. With the steam from the Qiuling tea, Feng Wu's eyes felt rested and looked as limpid as before. Qiuling took the towel, then handed Feng Wu a pair of soft slippers. All of Feng Wu's shoes were made by Qiuling to the exact measurement of Feng Wu's feet. They always fit Feng Wu nicely. Qiuling, it's so wonderful to have you around. I don't think I'd know what to do without you. Feng Wu enjoyed Qiuling's service. Qiuling smiled gently. Miss Wu, you're meant for important things. Helping you with the petty matters is all I can do. Chapter 671, Spectacular. But the petty things are the most difficult to do properly, said Feng Wu. I'm going to see Grand Secretary Feng next door. Send Feng Tutu to fetch me if someone comes. Qiuling said, no problem. Rolling up the drawing and tucking it under her arm, Feng Wu jumped over the wall. Grand Secretary Feng opened his eyes in surprise when Feng Wu unfolded the drawing in front of him. Wait! Grand Secretary Feng was stunned. This is an immortal Tai essence gathering formation. Grand Secretary Feng stared at Feng Wu. This is a Grandmaster level formation which has been lost for generations. Where did you get this? No, that's not it. Grand Secretary Feng examined the paper and the ink. That's not right. Why is the paper the same as mine here? It's the paper from Calming Mind Hull. It's a new product on the market, and the ink. Who drew this? Grand Secretary Feng stared at Feng Wu. What do you think of the drawing? Feng Wu asked casually. It's great. It's wonderful. It's a perfect Grandmaster level essence gathering formation. Even the corners are immaculate. Most importantly, Grand Secretary Feng turned to Feng Wu. Do you know why it's so hard to pass on the design of an essence gathering formation? Why? Because, in order to draw it, one has to be a cultivator first. They also have to have an understanding of formations, or they won't be able to comprehend the essence gathering formation. Last but not least, they have to be an expert illustrator to do the actual drawing. Grand Secretary Feng looked astonished. Who drew this? You must have met the person, right? Take me to them. Feng Wu asked, is it really that good? She had learned to draw from her beautiful master. Her beautiful master had taught her a lot of things, and drawing was only one of them. He had only taught her because she needed it in order to learn to draw formations. However, she had never slacked off over the years and had practiced her skills frequently. This person will be the pillar of the empire. Grand Secretary Feng said in excitement. If they're willing to teach in Imperial College, I'll recommend that they become a member of the education board. Kiddo, take me to this person now. Feng Wu cleared her throat. Grand Secretary Feng looked at her in confusion. Feng Wu then gestured at herself. Grand Secretary Feng didn't get it at first. What? I drew it, Feng Wu said earnestly. Grand Secretary Feng. Feng Wu nodded. Yup. Grand Secretary Feng said, Kiddo, this is no laughing matter. Feng Wu only smiled. Grand Secretary Feng had seen Feng Wu's formation skills, her cultivation, and her theoretical knowledge, but he had never expected her to be an expert illustrator, too. Exactly where did you learn all these things? Grand Secretary Feng exhaled. When did you learn how to draw? What on earth? Talk about excelling over one's seniors. Feng Wu smiled bitterly. I learned 5 years ago. After that, I was busy studying how to refine medicine, and I haven't drawn for a while. Luckily, I still know how to do it. The old man didn't know what to say. Feng Wu said, Old Master, what do you think of this immortal Tai formation? What do I think? It's spectacular. Chapter 672, Heart of Ice Essence. So, shall we build an immortal Tai formation in the manner based on this drawing? Feng Wu was thrilled. The thought of taking part in the construction of a Grandmaster-level formation excited Grand Secretary Feng. Of course. Even Imperial College can't build such a formation. Grand Secretary Feng gloated. It's been suggested, but they don't have enough spiritual stones to sustain such a formation. All advanced cultivators knew the significance of an immortal Tai formation. Feng Wu said, Old Master, I'm afraid I'll have to leave the preparation of the building materials to you. Grand Secretary Feng waved his hand. Don't worry about it. Your top priority now is the physical tryout in 7 days. After some thought, Grand Secretary Feng sighed in resignation. Kiddo, you're a level 5 spiritual grandmaster already and much more advanced than any of the other candidates. You'll have no problem getting the highest score. No. Feng Wu smiled bitterly. Old Master, Yu Minji is a candidate this year as well. Grand Secretary Feng also smiled bitterly at the thought of Yu Minji. I had high hopes for him, but he only passed the written exam as the last on the list. He was set up. Feng Wu couldn't help but chuckle when she recalled how Jun Linyuan had tricked Yu Minji into waiting on Imperial Capital Tower for a whole night. The guy ended up catching a bad cold. Grand Secretary Feng said, Yu Minji is the dark sacred son and as famous as His Royal Highness. Who could have set him up? Jun Linyuan. Grand Secretary Feng rubbed his chin. That makes sense. That made sense. So, Grand Secretary Feng thought it was natural for Yu Minji to fall for Jun Linyuan's tricks? Well, maybe everyone thought it was natural that Jun Linyuan could fool anyone. By the way, what will the physical tryout be like this year? Feng Wu asked. She had asked the right person, for Grand Secretary Feng had overseen the physical tryout many times. Grand Secretary Feng said, the physical tryout will take place on one of 7 terrains, an iceberg, a snowfield, a wasteland, a swamp, a desert, grassland, or a forest. The location will be chosen randomly. But given that Mr. Liu is in seclusion and with what happened with Suahe, the college hasn't decided how to proceed yet. Feng Wu tilted her head. For the eye of the immortal Tai formation, we'll need a heart of ice essence. The old man nodded. We can pull some strings or purchase the other materials, But the Heart of Ice essence isn't something you can come across every day. I don't think anyone has it at the moment, but... But what? But in the location known as Proud Snowfield, there is a giant ice beast, Snowy Night Ice Beast. Its heart is a Heart of Ice essence. Grand Secretary Feng said in a serious voice. And the location of the physical tryout hasn't been decided yet. No, Grand Secretary Feng frowned. He realized what Feng Wu was going to say. As expected, the girl said decisively, how about making it happen in Proud Snowfield? No. The old man turned her down outright. One has to be a Year 2 student at least to enter Proud Snowfield's outer region, not to mention that all of you are only candidates. No, I won't allow it. But... No buts. Grand Secretary Feng frowned. I'll think of something else. But locations like Proud Snowfield are for students only, and can only be accessed by people of a certain age group, right? You won't be able to get in yourself, said Feng Wu. Chapter 673, All of a Sudden. Some truths weren't meant to be explicitly pointed out. Grand Secretary Feng cast a stern look at Feng Wu. That's not something you should be concerned with. The physical tryout will most likely take place in Seclusion Wasteland. Try to get used to the climate before the exam starts. Now, if you don't have anything else to tell me, go back home and get on with your cultivation. Grand Secretary Feng sent Feng Wu on her way. Proud Snowfield was way too dangerous and he would never put the kid in such a perilous situation. Moreover, even the actual students of the college were confined to the outer regions, whereas that Snowy Night Ice Beast resided deep in the center of the snowfield. If the physical tryout was held in that location, he had no doubt that the dauntless kid would go right in. Feng Wu left the Feng Manor, rubbing her nose all the way. But she still didn't want to give up. Normally, Proud Snowfield only opened once a year. Who knew when it would open again if the tryout wasn't held there? Plus. Feng Wu wanted to complete the formation as soon as possible. That way, not only herself, but all her family members would be able to cultivate more efficiently. After all, the Zhou family was on to her now. What did she have to do to get Proud Snowfield chosen for the physical tryout? Jun Linyuan was the first person who came to Feng Wu's mind. One word from Jun Linyuan and her problem would be solved. However, Feng Wu shook her head at the thought of going to Jun Linyuan for help. No. Was there another option? Feng Wu then thought of Yu Minji. The guy acted like a goofball, but when he put his mind to it, he turned out to be very well connected. He had certainly demonstrated his capability in getting Feng Yanfeng that job. Hence, Feng Wu went to Yu Minji. Proud Snowfield. Yu Minji wasn't there when Feng Wu arrived. Elder One greeted her. When he asked what it was about, Feng Wu told him her request. Feng Wu asked, is it possible to pick Proud Snowfield? Elder One gave it some thought, then smiled at her. Miss Feng Wu, you've always been a lucky girl. I'm sure your wish will be granted in the end. Thank you, sir. Feng Wu smiled. You're welcome. If you do want to thank us, please come and visit our young master more often, said Elder One earnestly. He talks about you all the time. Feng Wu said, of course. She left after that and got back on her carriage. Miss? Seeing that Feng Wu was lost in her thoughts, Qiuling raised her voice a little. Feng Wu came back to herself. Let's go to Northern Feng Mansion now. Qiuling was worried about Feng Wu's health. Her mistress hadn't gotten any sleep last night. After making the medicine, she had gone on to draw the formation right away. She then went to visit Grand Secretary Feng and young Master Yu Minji one after another. And now, she was going to see Lady Northern Feng. Wasn't this too much, to keep working without any rest? Qiuling was even more concerned when she saw Feng Wu's pale face. Northern Feng Mansion. It was the same guard from last time. Of course he wouldn't try to stop Feng Wu and he only smiled at her in an obsequious manner. Miss Feng, we're so glad to see you. Young Lord Feng told me to wait for you and to show you in as soon as you arrived. Feng Wu smiled and nodded at him. Lady Northern Feng was in the main courtyard. Feng Wu could hear hasty footsteps before she entered the courtyard. Feng Sun was inside. Hearing her footsteps, Feng Sun dashed out, grabbed Feng Wu by her wrist, and dragged her inside. Xiao Wu. Quickly. My mum needs you. There were other people in the room when Feng Sun dragged her in, but Feng Wu didn't have time to see who they were. Chapter 674, What's Wrong? Is Lady Northern Feng alright? Feng Wu frowned. Feng Sun grimaced. Her headache was so bad last night that I thought we were going to lose her. Granny Tao went out to fetch you, so I went to Master Bai, who used to treat my mum. He added, Master Bai is an imperial physician and his skills are second only to Master Chu. He prescribed some medicine to treat my mum for her vertigo. Feng Wu glared at him. He didn't. Lady Northern Feng's symptoms are caused by problems with her spleen and stomach. Treating it as vertigo will only give her temporary relief and will aggravate her symptoms later. That's ridiculous. The girl was very intimidating when she was all serious. Feng Sun cringed at Feng Wu's harsh tone and he pursed his lips. Yes. Without hesitation, Feng Wu checked Lady Northern Feng's pulse. She frowned right away. You still fed her the vertigo medicine. Feng Sun kept his silence. Speak. Feng Wu glared at Feng Sun. Feng Sun bit his lip. Her condition was so serious and Master Bai said that your medicine smelled wrong. He said that it would kill my mum, so... Feng Wu frowned as she looked at Lady Northern Feng, who lay still in bed. So, you fed Master Bai's medicine to your mother and she's been lying still like this ever since? Feng Wu smirked. Feng Sun said hesitantly, my mum felt better for about an hour after she took the medicine, then she started to vomit blood. We were so worried that we fed your medicine to her. Feng Sun's eyes lit up. It was like a miracle. Mum stopped vomiting blood after that and she's been sleeping peacefully since then. Feng Wu rolled her eyes at Feng Sun. What are you so cheerful about? Ha! Hasn't my mum been cured by your medicine? Cured? Feng Wu felt like slapping Feng Sun. You fed her my medicine without getting the vertigo medicine out of her system first. Do you know that different medicines can react with each other? If I had added one more portion of divine wood shell in my medicine, your mum would be lying in a coffin now. What? Feng Sun blanched. That's serious? That's serious. Feng Wu glared at Feng Sun. Feng Sun drained of all color and was scared out of his wits. Meanwhile, the others in the room all looked at Feng Wu in bewilderment. Mrs. Ning had never expected Feng Wu to tell Feng Sun off without hesitation. What was more, Feng Sun didn't even dare talk back. Mrs. Ning recalled what Lady Northern Feng had told her the day before. Chenxi stands no chance. Xiao Wu doesn't even want my Sun. Mrs. Ning hadn't been convinced at first, but her heart sank after she saw the interaction between Feng Wu and Feng Sun. Miss Feng Lu, Ning Chenxi was infatuated when he finally saw Feng Wu again after several months. Feng Sun threw a dirty look at his cousin. What Feng Lu? She's Feng Wu. As in, the phoenix soars above the land. Ning Chenxi was completely at a loss. Mrs. Ning hadn't had the chance to tell Ning Chenxi the truth after she got back last night. Then Lady Northern Feng fell ill, and Mrs. Ning was too preoccupied to give her son an explanation. As a result, Ning Chenxi still thought Feng Wu was Feng Lu. Come here. Mrs. Ning dragged Ning Chenxi out of the room, then found a quiet corner and told him everything. Ning Chenxi was shocked. He was dazed on the spot, as if he had been struck by lightning. Chapter 675, She's Feng Wu. What? She's Feng Wu. Not Feng Lu. Mrs. Ning nodded. How is that possible? How? The news was such a hard blow that Ning Chensi was stupefied. I asked her sister and that girl told me that her sister's name was Feng Lu. Which one is the girl you like, then? Feng Lu or Feng Wu? Mrs. Ning asked in resignation. I want to marry the girl in that room right now. Whatever her name is, I'm in love with her and her alone. Ning Chensi was almost in tears. But we've been trying to set up an engagement with Miss Feng Lu all this time. Who's Feng Lu? The girl you asked for her sister's name. Ning Chensi spat out a mouthful of blood. It turned out that he had been courting that girl without knowing it. That's why everybody's been telling us that Feng Lu is this arrogant, willful, and vicious girl that won't make a good wife. They all tried to talk me out of it, and this is why. I've been courting the wrong girl all along. Gosh! Ning Chensi felt like fainting. Mrs. Ning steadied him. Don't be upset. Everything's going to be alright. Luckily, the Feng clan didn't say yes. We can just forget the whole thing. With much difficulty, Ning Chensi nodded at his mother, then glanced back at the room. Forget it. Mrs. Ning snapped. Your aunt wanted her as a daughter-in-law as well, but even Ah-sun isn't her match. She'll never say yes to you. Ning Chensi was speechless. Back inside. Feng Wu checked Lady Northern Feng's pulse, then ran a thorough examination on the lady. She almost lost her temper at what she found and her face darkened. Feng Sun had been tentatively watching Feng Wu, and his stomach lurched when he saw the look on her face. He asked gingerly, Xiao Wu, how serious is it? The two medicines are working against each other and they've gathered in her spleen and stomach. Feng Wu took a deep breath to fight back her urge to smack Feng Sun. Your mother's ailment started from her spleen and stomach, and they're her weakest spots. To make matters worse, the two medicines are incompatible. It's like they're waging war and your mother's weak spleen and stomach are the battlefield. Both medicines want to defeat each other. Does that sound serious enough for you? Feng Sun was almost in tears. Young Lord Feng, the famous unruly youth of the imperial capital, who always had his sycophantic buddies around him, almost cried with shame because of what Feng Wu said. Stop it already. Do young lords like you cry this easily? Feng Wu rolled her eyes at him. Reassured by Feng Wu's teasing tone, Feng Wu tugged at Feng Wu's sleeve. You can save my mother, right? Right? Feng Wu snorted. No one will be able to save her if this happens again. After that, she took out a pack of silver needles from her sleeve. She then stuck the needles in Lady Northern Feng's acupoints. Before long, wisps of smoke began to rise out of Lady Northern Feng's body. Are you trying to vaporize the medicine? Feng Sun asked. Feng Wu darted a look at him. I thought you were going to make Mum vomit, but your skills are much more advanced. I didn't know that was possible, directly vaporizing the medicine. Chapter 676, Godmother. Feng Wu darted a glance at him. Who told you the medicine is evaporating? It's not. Why bother? Plus, it's a waste of my energy. Feng Wu explained as she went on sticking needles into the lady's stomach. All I need to do is lend my medicine a hand and let it do its job to force the other side out. Feng Sun's eyes lit up. Why didn't I think of that before? Because you're dumb. Feng Wu chuckled. Seeing Feng Wu's smile, Feng Sun's mind was set at rest. He was now convinced that his mother would be all right. Looking at Feng Wu, Feng Sun was amazed. He didn't know that this girl was such a wonderful doctor. Back in Wanping town, when she saved his aunt, he had attributed it partially to luck. As it turned out, she should be given all the credit. After getting Master Bai's medicine out of Lady Northern Feng's system, Feng Wu prescribed her patient something new. She read the prescription as she wrote. 45 g of Pinellia ternata fried with ginger, 30 g of white atractylodes rhizome, 45 g of malt. Soon, she handed the finished prescription to Feng Sun. Feng Sun looked through it and was surprised. These are all inexpensive ingredients. The prescription only consisted of inexpensive ingredients, which altogether wouldn't cost him more than a silver coin. Master Bai's prescribed ingredients cost more than 1,000 silver coins each. Feng Sun looked at Feng Wu. The price is irrelevant. All you need are the right ingredients. Feng Wu waved him off. Get going already. Yes, Feng Sun left in a hurry. Lady Northern Feng, who still looked very pale, chuckled. You're awake. Feng Wu helped Lady Northern Feng sit up. Lady Northern Feng nodded, then smiled at Feng Wu. Why are you laughing? Do I look that funny? Feng Wu said in resignation. I've never seen Ah Sun that obedient. Lady Northern Feng found herself a comfortable position, then grinned. He's always been this unruly, bossy young lord who picks on other people. It's so rare to see him getting told off. He deserved it. Feng Wu said grumpily. He didn't believe me and almost got you killed. Taking Feng Wu's hand, Lady Northern Feng sighed with emotion. Kiddo, you're amazing. Are you clairvoyant? You said I was going to get sick and I did. You even made the medicine in advance. Without it, I could be dead by now. My whole body was in pain before you came, especially in my belly. I thought I was going to pass out. But your needles worked wonders. The pain was gone almost as soon as you stuck them in me. Lady Northern Feng had always liked Feng Wu. Now that the girl had saved her life, Feng Wu had become the lady's most favorite person in the world. Lady Northern Feng wanted to keep the girl by her side forever. Feng Wu nodded. The incident last night could be a good thing. Just think of it like popping an abscess to let the pus out. It would be much harder to treat if the ailment stayed in you for too long. Lady Northern Feng nodded, then asked earnestly, Xiao Wu, are you not going to consider Ah Sun as a possible husband for you? Feng Wu gave her a wry smile. The young lord and I aren't made for each other. Lady Northern Feng sighed in resignation. She had an inkling earlier that Feng Wu wasn't fond of Feng Sun when she heard their conversation. As it turned out, she was right. However, Lady Northern Feng simply liked Feng Wu too much to give up. If she couldn't have her as a daughter-in-law, she could live with having her as a goddaughter. Hence, Lady Northern Feng took Feng Wu's hand and stared at the latter with sparkling eyes. How would you like me as a godmother? Chapter 677, Great News. Feng Wu raised an eyebrow. To be honest, with Northern Feng Mansion's current status, it was way beyond Feng Wu's power to form a connection with them. But Lady Northern Feng was sincere. Won't you say yes? Lady Northern Feng swayed Feng Wu's hand back and forth and asked in a pitiful voice. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. What happened to that tough lady? Feng Wu could never say no to such an earnest request. Well, I'll have to discuss it with my mom. That was to say, Feng Wu wasn't against the idea. Lady Northern Feng's face lit up right away. Other people would envy her so much for having a pretty, capable, and smart goddaughter like this. The thought brought a bright smile to Lady Northern Feng's face. Feng Sun came back with the medicine at that moment. Seeing that his mother was already looking much better after such a short period of time, he was thrilled. He went up to her in a hurry. Mum, are you all right now? Lady Northern Feng said lightheartedly, Xiao Wu is here. Of course I'm all right. You look so happy. Feng Sun was bewildered. Of course. Care to share? Lady Northern Feng grinned. You'll be thrilled to hear the news, but... Exchanging looks with Feng Wu, Lady Northern Feng smiled at Feng Sun. I'll tell you what it is when I get confirmation. Kiddo, you'll be so happy. Looking from Feng Wu to his mother, Feng Sun thought to himself, was his mother going to marry little Feng Wu to him? If that was the case, he really would be so thrilled. Feng Sun grinned at his mother. Feng Wu told her beautiful mother about it after she got back home. The lady rubbed Feng Wu's head, then asked in a pitiful voice, will you still be my Xiao Wu? Taking her mother's soft, fair hand, Feng Wu said earnestly, "I'll always be your Xiao Wu." Lady Northern Feng was a great lady, but Feng Wu was going to take her offer for another reason. Right now, Feng Wu had no one backing her. She had a score to settle and a goal to reach. But she was still too weak to protect this family. She needed connections, resources, and patrons. Lady Northern Feng was the most popular socialite, and the Northern Feng general was an influential military official who guarded the border of the empire. The lady was warm, cheerful, tough, sincere, and friendly. Feng Sun was easy to get along with, too. The offer had been dropped in Feng Wu's lap and she had no reason to turn it down. From now on, she could leave a lot of things to Northern Feng Mansion and wouldn't have to go to Jun Linyuan anymore. Feng Wu was elated by the idea. She then sent a message back to Lady Northern Feng, accepting the offer. Lady Northern Feng was over the moon. She couldn't stay in bed anymore and scrambled to her feet. "Granny Tao, quickly, get my things ready. We're going to visit the Feng clan." Feng Sun stopped his mother right away. "Why the rush? Can't it wait until after you get better?" "But I am better. Xiao Wu can cure anything." What Lady Northern Feng didn't tell her goofy son was that she had gotten her first period in over 4 years. Feng Sun examined Lady Northern Feng's complexion. She did look much better. "But why are you in a hurry to visit the Feng clan?" Feng Sun was bewildered. "How about I go fetch Feng Wu for you?" Chapter 678, I don't want a sister. "Don't." Lady Northern Feng said excitedly as she sat still and let Granny Tao dress her. "We need to go see her family in person to show our sincerity. And Ah Sun, go put on something nice. You should look your best for the occasion." Feng Sun's eyes lit up. Go see her family in person? Show sincerity? And he was to change into something nice? For the occasion? He liked the sound of that. Feng Sun grinned at the thought. However, he decided to play safe and asked gingerly, "Mom, are we going to visit little Feng Wu's mother?" "Yes." "F for what?" Feng Sun was eager to hear the word marriage. "However, I didn't tell you." Lady Northern Feng looked at Feng Sun in bewilderment. "Didn't you say that you were only going to tell me after you got confirmation?" Feng Sun fought back his urge to roll his eyes. Lady Northern Feng looked enlightened. "That's right. So, can you tell me what it is now?" Feng Sun blinked and guffawed inwardly. He knew it. "Well, I guess it doesn't matter now. Little Feng Wu is going to become your..." Lady Northern Feng paused for effect. Feng Sun wanted to scream with joy. "Oh God! Sister," only then did Lady Northern Feng finish her sentence. Feng Sun stood there with a blank face, as if he had just been hit on the head. "Sister? Sister? Sister?" Feng Sun looked like he was in a trance. All his energy seemed to have left him. Lady Northern Feng gave him a little shove. "Stop standing around. Go get changed. You need to look your best for your sister." Feng Sun. He clenched his fists. "I'm not going with you." Feng Sun snapped. Lady Northern Feng snapped back, "Suit yourself. I'm going on my own." After that, Lady Northern Feng left with Granny Tao. Poor Feng Sun. He was left behind, just like that. And he couldn't stop hearing that word in his ears, sister, sister, sister. To hell with a sister. He yelled after Lady Northern Feng, "I don't want her as my sister. I don't." And everyone in Northern Feng Mansion could hear him. Lady Northern Feng flared up. Was he trying to let all the servants know that he didn't like his new sister? Turning around, Lady Northern Feng smacked Feng Sun on the head. Ouch! Feng Sun stared at Lady Northern Feng with tears in his eyes. "That hurt. Like it or not, she's going to be your sister." Lady Northern Feng left after that. Feng Sun's head hurt and he felt so aggrieved. How had this happened? However, Feng Sun couldn't imagine standing up to a tough mother like Lady Northern Feng. He needed to give vent to his anger now. But to whom? That was right. His Royal Highness didn't like little Feng Wu, which made him the ideal person. Your sister. Jun Linyuan had just finished cultivating when Feng Sun rushed in, threw himself onto a chaise lounge, and started complaining. That's right. What was my mother thinking? Feng Sun gritted his teeth. Since when do I want her as a sister? I want to marry her. Instantly, Jun Linyuan turned his sharp gaze on Feng Sun. And the temperature dropped. The lake froze almost immediately. And the fish inside froze with the water. But... Chapter 679, A Marriage Proposal. Lady Northern Feng had no idea that her silly son had gone to Jun Linyuan for help. Meanwhile, she was headed for the Feng Manor with Mrs. Ning. Embarrassed by what had happened, Mrs. Ning didn't want to go at first. However, Lady Northern Feng took her hand and smiled. That Lady Wang is just the lady of an ordinary household. Why should you be embarrassed? You're the sister of the Northern Feng general. Pull yourself together. Mrs. Ning liked the sound of that. It was all that Feng Lu's fault. Not only had she taken credit for something she didn't do, she almost made the Ning family obtain the wrong bride. Feng Lu needed to take responsibility. The Feng clan. Lady Wang was in charge of household affairs in the Feng clan. Hence, she was the first to be informed of Lady Northern Feng's visit. Lady Wang had been in a foul mood for days. Feng Lu's condition had made her very twitchy. Whenever she thought about the father of the child, Lady Wang wanted to kill herself. She thought about getting rid of the baby at first, but after consulting the medicine refiner, she was told that Feng Lu couldn't have an abortion. Because a tumor had been growing inside Feng Lu and it was very close to the baby. An abortion would be very dangerous for Feng Lu and she might die during the process. So, you have to have this baby. The tumor will come out when you give birth. Lady Wang said in a grave tone as she held Feng Lu's hand. But, Feng Lu felt that her whole life was ruined. But, how am I going to do that? Listen to me. Lady Wang stared at Feng Lu. I've asked an oracle. You're going to have a blessed baby. It'll become a genius one day. Really? Yes. Lady Wang had really done that, which was why she was so certain. So, you must give birth to the baby. Listen, Lady Wang stared at Feng Lu. We have to find the baby a father. Feng Lu wept. The Ning family has been repeatedly asking to marry you to their son. It's a good family. They're well connected and the son is very promising. The Ning family it is, then. Feng Lu wanted to say no, but she was in no position to do so. She could only fight back her tears and say yes. Granny Gui's voice rang out at that moment. What? Lady Northern Feng is here in person. And Mrs. Ning, too? Lady Wang was thrilled. That's great. The Ning family had been awfully quiet these last few days and Lady Wang had been wondering why. Now that Lady Northern Feng and Mrs. Ning were here together, it had to be about the marriage proposal. So, Granny Tao had taken Feng Wu with her to ask about the Feng clan, hadn't she? That damn girl. She hadn't told them anything after she got back. Lady Wang cursed Feng Wu in her head. After straightening her clothes, Lady Wang went out to greet the guests. After all, Lady Northern Feng was here as well. It's a great honor to have you here, your ladyship. Please come in. Lady Northern Feng had planned to go to Fallen Star Yard right away, but seeing how enthusiastic Lady Wang was. Well, she was Xiao Wu's aunt, and Lady Northern Feng thought it inappropriate to ignore her. At that thought, Lady Northern Feng followed Lady Wang into the main hall. Lady Wang still believed that the Ning family was desperately trying to marry their son to Feng Lu and she became very reserved and nonchalant toward Mrs. Ning. Mrs. Ning frowned. Lady Northern Feng broke the ice. Lady Wang, I'm here to ask you a favor. Yes, that was quick. Lady Wang was excited. Chapter 680, about that. However, Lady Wang kept her countenance very still. Really? May I ask what it's about? Lady Northern Feng glanced at Lady Wang. How's Feng Lu doing these days? Lady Wang smiled. She told Granny Gui to bring Feng Lu here, then went back to talking with Lady Northern Feng. Lady Northern Feng wasn't happy about the arrangement at all, but she decided she would be more patient with Lady Wang just for Feng Lu's sake. And Feng Lu? Feng Lu had finally pulled herself together. Since she was going to marry Ning Chenxi no matter what, she had to make sure that she was ready for it. Moreover, it wouldn't be right if she didn't humiliate Feng Lu first. Feng Lu went to Feng Lu right away. What did you say? Feng Lu looked at Feng Lu in bewilderment. I'm going to marry Ning Chenxi. Feng Lu gloated. I'm going to become his legitimate wife and he's going to give me a big fat wedding. Feng Lu didn't know what to say. Feng Lu had no idea that Feng Lu already knew about her misleading Ning Chenxi. What's that look on your face? Feng Lu threw a dirty look at Feng Lu. I'm your sister and I'm getting married. Aren't you even going to congratulate me? Feng Lu couldn't even be bothered to look at Feng Lu, for she found all the bickering a waste of her time. She began to close the door. Feng Lu! How dare you shut me out? Resting her hands on her waist, Feng Lu ranted. Did you hear me? Ning Chenxi is going to be my husband. As in young Lord Feng's cousin, Ning Chenxi. Feng Lu said, right. That's wonderful. Are we done here? Feng Lu didn't like Feng Lu's indifferent attitude at all. Feng Lu, you're jealous of me. Feng Lu almost rolled her eyes at Feng Lu. I'm going to marry into the Ning family and you're never going to find a husband, because you're a useless piece of shit with no spiritual essence. Feng Lu snorted. His Royal Highness might treat you differently now, but he won't even have you as a concubine. You'll live more miserably than a slave. Smack! Feng Lu was going to ignore Feng Lu, but the girl just wouldn't stop. She had to insult Feng Lu to satisfy her sense of superiority. She was venting her anger for having to marry Ning Chenxi. Feng Lu was never the type to submit meekly to oppression. She slapped Feng Lu hard in the face. Feng Lu spun around at the impact. Her servants were all stunned by Feng Lu's sudden move. You hit me. Feng Lu glared at Feng Lu, as if she wanted to set Feng Lu on fire with her eyes. Feng Lu smirked. Yes, I did. And I have a question for you. Are you an idiot? Feng Lu. Showing off in front of me in that condescending tone, really? Feng Lu sneered. Your mother doesn't know why the Ning family wants Feng Lu as their new bride, but you know exactly why. As Feng Lu pressed, Feng Lu stumbled back. Feng Lu even looked frightened. Feng Lu could always intimidate her. I have no idea what you're talking about. Feng Lu gritted her teeth. On our way back to the imperial capital, don't tell me that you were the one who saved Mrs. Ning in Wanping town. Feng Lu took another step forward. Shit! Feng Lu's face drained of all color. What did you tell Ning Chenxi when he asked the name of his mother's savior? Feng Lu panicked. She had never thought this would happen. She had said it on a whim. Chapter 681, Would she be recognized? Feng Lu had never considered the aftermath of her whimsical, selfish reply. She didn't know what Ning Chenxi had in mind. Deep down, Feng Lu knew that Ning Chenxi had been trying so hard to marry her only because he thought Feng Lu was the girl who had saved his mother. Nonetheless, with Feng Lu's current condition, she had no choice but to take the offer. And she decided she was going to be very cheerful about it, and had to show off in front of Feng Lu. What Feng Lu hadn't foreseen was Feng Lu knowing about her lie. What do you mean? Are you trying to take Ning Chenxi away from me? Take him away. Feng Wu found Feng Lu ridiculous. Feng Lu took a deep breath. Feng Wu, I'm warning you. Ning Chenxi is mine. If you try anything, I'll tell the whole world that my sister is seducing my husband. Feng Wu chuckled. Your husband? Get married first, will you? Do you think I won't? Feng Lu snorted. The Ning family adores me. They've sent all kinds of influential people over as matchmakers. For what I've heard, even Lord Wuan came. And what will you become? A concubine, at best. Feng Lu left after those words, looking like an arrogant peacock. Feng Wu didn't say anything. Exactly how annoying can that woman be? Qiuling had just finished cultivating, and she rushed out, only to find that Feng Lu had left. Qiuling said grumpily, that was fast. I thought I could beat her up. Feng Wu chuckled. Read more chapter on novel full. Xiao Wu, how can you bring yourself to laugh? Don't you find her so annoying? Feng Wu nodded. Yes, she's always been annoying. But you won't have to beat her up yourself this time. Really? Who's going to do it, then? Lady Northern Feng and Mrs. Ning. For real? Feng Wu nodded with a smile. There's going to be a lot of face slapping. Feng Lu ran into Granny Gui on her way back and the latter hurriedly took her by the wrist. Miss Lu, come with me. Granny Gui? Lady Northern Feng is here and she's in the main hall at the moment. My lady asked me to bring you to the honored guest. Granny Gui broke the news. Please hurry up. Feng Lu raised her chin. There's no need to rush. Granny Gui smiled bitterly. My dear Miss Lu, it's Lady Northern Feng we're talking about here. We can't afford to keep her waiting. Feng Lu didn't think much of it. If Ning Chenxi really liked her, this was the perfect time for her to assume airs. Plus, all girls were supposed to be demure. Feng Lu walked unhurriedly toward the main hall, tidying herself up as she went. Meanwhile, Lady Northern Feng had lost her patience. She had given Feng Wu's and all the respect she could spare and she was going to leave the hall now. She needed to go to Fallen Star Yard. Just then footsteps came from outside. Lady Wang greeted the person cheerfully. Xiao Lu's here. Quickly, show her in. Lady Northern Feng and Mrs. Ning have been waiting for a long time. Lady Northern Feng and Mrs. Ning turned their heads when Feng Lu walked in. Feng Lu's stomach lurched when she heard her mother's words. Mrs. Ning. Mrs. Ning was here. Shit. Feng Lu's face darkened a little. Feng Wu had saved Mrs. Ning twice and the lady had clearly seen Feng Wu's face. That was to say, Mrs. Ning would know who Feng Lu really was as soon as they met. Chapter 682, Marriage Proposal. Feng Lu blanched at that thought. Why didn't anyone tell her that Mrs. Ning was here, too? She was about to step over the threshold, but now she hesitated. Should she go in or not? No. Feng Lu turned tail, fleeing the scene. She couldn't blow her cover at this stage. As Feng Lu turned to leave, Granny Gui wouldn't let her mistress leave so quickly after looking for her everywhere. So, she raised her voice. Miss Lu, please come in. Granny Gui then took Feng Lu's arm and led the latter into the hall. Lu there you are. Lady Wang was delighted. She then smiled at Lady Northern Feng and Mrs. Ning. My Lu is a kind, shy, and demure girl. She hardly ever meets anyone from outside. Xiao Wu is the one that's running around like a wild girl all the time. Please don't mind her. Lady Northern Feng wasn't happy to hear that at all. What kind of aunt did Xiao Wu have? This woman just had to throw mud at Xiao Wu while praising her own daughter. No wonder everyone else thought so low of Xiao Wu, when she was in fact a wonderful girl. That wouldn't do. Read more chapter on novel full. Lady Northern Feng made up her mind. Once Feng Wu became her goddaughter, she would tell all the noble ladies she socialized with how amazing Xiao Wu really was. She would make sure Xiao Wu had as great a reputation as she deserved. At that thought, Lady Northern Feng threw a dirty look at Lady Wang. However, Lady Wang didn't notice it, for she had stood up to greet Feng Lu. Lady Wang brought the reluctant Feng Lu to Lady Northern Feng and said with a smile, "This is Feng Lu, my dear daughter. I think your ladyship has met her before." Feng Lu looked up and met Mrs. Ning's gaze. Her stomach lurched. "Yes, I have," said Lady Northern Feng with a smile. "Last time at the Yen Manor." Well, Lady Wang looked like she had just been slapped and her face darkened. Was Lady Northern Feng here to humiliate her today? At the Yen Manor. What about the Yen Manor? Mrs. Ning asked deliberately. Lady Wang smiled awkwardly. Well, that's great. Lu Er, this is Mrs. Ning. Feng Lu felt so embarrassed that she wanted to leave the room now. However, the baby in her belly didn't give her too much choice. Nice to meet you, Mrs. Ning, Feng Lu bowed. Mrs. Ning gave her a little nod. Oh, it's you. Lady Wang stared at Mrs. Ning in disbelief. Wasn't the Ning family so eager to have Feng Lu as their new bride? She thought that the family would stop at nothing to have Feng Lu. Why did Mrs. Ning look so impatient and indifferent now that she had finally met Feng Lu? Lady Wang was displeased. Your son is fond of Feng Lu. Stop assuming airs. Face dark, Lady Wang snorted. Mrs. Ning, I see you're not so pleased with my daughter. May I ask why? Mrs. Ning didn't answer the question, but only turned to Lady Northern Feng with a smile. The Yen Manor? Is that my elder sister's home? Did something happen while I was away? Lady Northern Feng smiled wryly. Well, it's quite embarrassing, really. But since we're all family here, I guess it's okay for me to talk about it. Last time at the Yen Manor, Yen Yen and Feng Lu. Lady Northern Feng didn't hold anything back at all. She gave a detailed account of everything that happened at the Yen Manor last time. Lady Wang tried to interrupt a few times, but Lady Northern Feng ignored her completely. Chapter 683, Interrogation. By the Lady Northern Feng finally finished her narration, Mrs. Ning's mouth had fallen open. So, after what happened, Feng Lu's and Yan Yan's reputations are kind of ruined. Well, they're still young and don't know right from wrong. I guess what they did could be excused, despite how evil they were. Lady Wang almost passed out. What was going on here? What was this woman doing? Were they here to propose a marriage or to break off an engagement? How could she say such things about Feng Lu in front of her own mother? That was so insulting. Face grim, Lady Wang glared at Lady Northern Feng. Your ladyship seems to be very displeased with my Lu heir. Thinking that Ning Chenxi was in love with Feng Lu, Lady Wang was emboldened. You're absolutely right. Lady Northern Feng nodded without hesitation. Lady Wang almost choked. She then smirked. If you really find my Lu heir that abominable, why are you here to propose a marriage? I don't care how much your son likes my daughter. She's not marrying him. Lady Wang raised her chin. Propose a marriage? Lady Northern Feng found Lady Wang preposterous. Who told you we're here for that? Lady Wang frowned. Read more chapter on novel full. They weren't. The Ning family had made the request several times through different matchmakers. And what about all the gifts they had sent? What else could they want if not a marriage? Lady Wang smirked. What are you doing here, then? Ha! Lady Northern Feng scoffed at her. Mrs. Ning, won't you say something? Seeing that the conversation with Lady Northern Feng wasn't going anywhere, Lady Wang turned to Mrs. Ning instead. Say what? Mrs. Ning looked confused. Hearing Mrs. Ning's indifferent tone, Lady Wang flared up. She glared at Mrs. Ning. Mrs. Ning, what's with that attitude? Does your family want my Feng Lu as a daughter-in-law or not? Lady Wang was so angry that she stopped beating around the bush. She didn't regret it either, for she thought she had seen through to the truth. Mrs. Ning frowned. Have Feng Lu as my daughter-in-law? My dear lady, where did you get that idea from? What? Lady Wang almost had a stroke. Where did she get that idea from? Are you going to deny that your family sent all those matchmakers to deliver your marriage proposal? Are you suggesting that I'm making it up? Lady Wang thought she was going to explode as she glared at Mrs. Ning. Mrs. Ning chuckled. Well, we did do all those things. However, she turned her cold gaze on Feng Lu. Need I say more? Frightened by Mrs. Ning's gaze, Feng Lu stumbled back. Lady Wang frowned. Had what happened to Lu Er gotten out? Lady Wang blanched and almost fainted. Mrs. Ning snorted. It was Feng Wu who saved me twice in Wanping town, but you took all the credit. You told us that the girl's name was Feng Lu. Recalling how long she had been fooled for, Mrs. Ning was furious. She pointed at Feng Lu with a finger. I'm so shocked. How could you bring yourself to do such a thing? You're unbelievably shameless for a girl of your age. Feng Lu kept stumbling back as Mrs. Ning scolded her. Lady Wang finally came back to herself. So, it wasn't about the pregnancy. But... Chapter 684, I'm not the one the Ning family wants to marry. What was all this about? Lu Er? Lady Wang tugged at Feng Lu. What's going on? Feng Lu had never been through such a thing and was so flustered that she burst into tears. Seeing how bewildered Feng Lu became after a few questions, Mrs. Ning frowned and blue veins popped in the corner of her forehead. The girl didn't know how to do anything but cry. And she had almost married such a girl to her son. And her family had pulled so many strings to do that. It was said that a virtuous wife could preserve a family's property for 3 generations. The Ning family would be ruined if they had Feng Lu as a wife. Mrs. Ning patted her chest, still a little shocked. Lady Wang stared at Feng Lu. What did you do? Had the Ning family been misled all this time? And how does Feng Lu have anything to do with this? Lady Wang narrowed her eyes. Mom, stop asking me questions. Feng Lu felt so ashamed that she couldn't stay in the room anymore. Both Mrs. Ning and Lady Northern Feng were sneering at her. Read more chapter on novel full. Feng Lu turned to leave, but, Miss Feng Lu, I think you should straighten things out first. Otherwise, if what happened in Wanping town got out, your already ruined reputation would get even worse. Mrs. Ning snickered. Feng Lu stopped abruptly, turned around, and glared at Mrs. Ning. The look in her eyes reminded one of a young, angry she-wolf. Mrs. Ning snorted. After doing such a thing at your age, you don't have the least intention of repenting. Fine, leave all you want. But Lady Wang wouldn't let Feng Lu leave just like that. Grabbing Feng Lu, Lady Wang turned to Mrs. Ning. What did you mean? I think you know what I meant. Mrs. Ning smirked. You're saying that the girl my son wants to marry is the one who saved me, and that's Feng Wu. But according to your daughter, Feng Lu was her name. Mrs. Ning felt sick at the idea. We pulled so many strings and visited your family repeatedly. We were so close to having your daughter. Everything was clear, so clear. Lady Wang knew everything now. But it was Feng Wu. Feng Wu is the one your family wants. Lady Wang gritted her teeth. Feng Lu also gritted her teeth, recalling how she had shown off in front of Feng Wu. Was this Feng Wu her own family's natural enemy? Why was she everywhere? In Fallen Star Yard, ha ha ha. After Feng Lu's little episode in Fallen Star Yard, Qiuling couldn't help but follow the girl out. She then heard the conversation in the main hall. And of course she was going to share it with Xiao Wu. Qiuling promptly went back to Fallen Star Yard and began to laugh before she said a word. Feng Xiaoqi rolled his eyes. Sister Qiuling, are you having a seizure or something? Ha 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 ha. Fighting back her laughter, Chowga repeated what she had heard just then. Ha 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 ha, it's so funny. That Feng Lu was showing off outside this yard only just then, ha 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 ha. She's unbelievable, ha 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 ha. Feng Xiaoqi's mouth fell open. The Ning family wants my sister as their daughter-in-law? Feng Xiaoqi's eyes widened. Yup. Chowga wiped away her tears. And Feng Lu had been thinking that she was the one all along. That was why she had been assuming heirs and wouldn't say yes. But it's all cleared up now. They got the name wrong. That look on Feng Lu's face, ha ha ha. Chapter 685, The Court. Feng Xiaoqi, why aren't you laughing? Don't you think it's really funny? Chowga rolled around on a chaise lounge until she almost fell to the ground. However, Feng Xiaoqi looked genuinely worried. Sister, Feng Xiaoqi went up to Feng Wu, tugged at her sleeve, and called her in a pitiful voice. Yes? Feng Wu was busy calculating the materials needed for the immortal Tai formation. The Ning family wants to marry you to their son. Yes. Are you going to say yes? Feng Wu darted a glance at Feng Xiaoqi. Are you an idiot? What? Feng Wu rubbed Feng Xiaoqi's head. I don't even like that Ning Chensi. Why would I marry him? I see. Feng Xiaoqi secretly rejoiced. Feng Wu went back to her calculations. She had to come up with all the figures and give them to Grand Secretary Feng's men. She didn't have the time or energy to do the actual work herself. Sister, so, are you going to marry someone else? Feng Xiaoqi asked hesitantly, looking uneasy. Feng Wu didn't even look up. I think so. Ha! But it would be many years from now. You'll probably be a grandpa yourself by then, Feng Wu said grumpily. What? Sister, you're making fun of me. Feng Wu smiled bitterly. She wished she was. Back in the main hall. After lashing out at Lady Wang and Feng Lu, Mrs. Ning felt a little better. Feng Wu. Your son wants to marry Feng Wu. Lady Wang snorted. Are you blind? She's useless. She has no cultivation ability. Lu Er is much better. Lady Northern Feng didn't like the sound of that at all. Feng Lu is much better. Feng Wu is better than 100 Feng Lius put together. Nonsense. Did Feng Lu pass the written exam? Lady Northern Feng got straight to the heart of the matter. Lady Wang fell silent. Is Feng Lu prettier than Feng Wu? Lady Northern Feng gave another blow. Lady Wang was silent. Can your Feng Lu bring a patient back to life? Lady Northern Feng snorted. Lady Wang retorted, as if Feng Wu can do that. Why do you think I'm going to ask Xiao Wu to become my goddaughter? Not only did she save Mrs. Ning twice, she saved my life just the other day. Of course she can. Lady Wang fell silent. Lady Northern Feng sneered at her. Do you even have a brain or eyes? You're only humiliating yourself, having me to point it out like this. Lady Wang. This was such a mean lady. Lady Wang almost exploded. But she was Lady Northern Feng. Lady Northern Feng enjoyed a superior status among the noble ladies not just because she was the Northern Feng general's wife, but also because she had been raised by the Empress Dowager herself. As a result, Lady Northern Feng had always been very special to the old lady. Anyone who dared to offend Lady Northern Feng had to have a death wish. Wait. Lady Wang finally came back to herself. You said, you're going to ask Feng Wu to become your goddaughter? They weren't here for the marriage proposal, but for Feng Wu. That was a much more important connection. The Ning family wasn't that closely linked to the court, but it wasn't the same for Lady Northern Feng. The imperial palace was practically her backyard. If Feng Wu became her goddaughter, the former would be invincible. Lady Wang hoped she had heard wrong. But Lady Northern Feng only gave her a "you idiot" look. Chapter 686, So Enthusiastic. You heard me right. Lady Northern Feng gloated at Lady Wang. I'm here today to claim Xiao Wu as my goddaughter. Lady Wang was dumbfounded. She had thought that Lady Northern Feng was here as a matchmaker for Feng Wu, but as it turned out, the lady wanted the girl as a daughter. So, the Ning family doesn't want Feng Wu as a daughter-in-law, after all. Lady Wang snorted. Mrs. Ning sighed. My son would be so lucky and honored to have Feng Wu as his wife. Unfortunately, my family isn't worth someone as amazing as her. She's way beyond our reach. Way beyond their reach. Lady Wang wanted to scream. This family had just turned down Feng Lu, but they said that they weren't good enough for Feng Wu. How much more did this woman want to insult Feng Lu? Lady Wang's face twisted. Fine. Fine. She took a deep breath. Feng Wu is a member of the Feng clan and she needs permission from the clan chief if she wants to have a godmother. Lady Northern Feng, even someone as prestigious as you has to play by the book. Lady Northern Feng smiled. Of course. I sent someone to fetch Sir Feng on our way here. Lady Wang took another deep breath to suppress her rage. She wanted to leave this room now, or even chase these two women out. However, Lady Northern Feng was the queen bee in her circle, and an invitation to her tea party was very hard to come by. Lady Wang still hadn't been invited, and the last thing she wanted to do was offend this noble lady. No matter how hard Lady Wang gritted her teeth, she couldn't let her anger show. Hey, will I ever be able to see Xiao Wu? Lady Northern Feng grew impatient. Despite her anger, Lady Wang couldn't do anything in the lady's presence. She said, I'll send for her now. No need. We'll go to Fallen Star Yard ourselves. It'll show our sincerity. Lady Northern Feng smiled. Lady Wang was furious. They were all sincere toward Feng Wu while they didn't even try to show Feng Lu any respect. Did they have to be so blatant about it? However, Lady Northern Feng had always been this willful. She never saw the need to justify her actions to anyone. Feng Lu wanted to slink off. But Lady Northern Feng glanced at her. You, come with us. Poor Feng Lu. She was cursing in her head, but she had no choice but to follow them out. In Fallen Star Yard. Knock, knock, knock. Someone was tapping on the door. Granny Zhao answered the door. The beautiful lady had been told that Lady Northern Feng was coming, and she was trying on an exquisite outfit. Various hairpins dangled by her face as she moved around gracefully. Xiao Wu, what do you think of this one? The beautiful lady's limpid eyes reminded Feng Wu of a fawn. She could tell that the lady was a little flustered about the idea of meeting strangers. Stunning. After seeing her mother's face a million times, Feng Wu was still amazed by how unbelievably beautiful she could be. You look great, wonderful, amazing. Feng Wu took her mother's hands. This one will do. Lady Northern Feng will be envious of you if you wear anything nicer. Someone laughed loudly at the door. Oh my, Xiao Wu, I see that you're making things up about me. Lady Northern Feng was so arrogant, unapproachable, and elegant around Lady Wang, but when she talked to Feng Wu, her tone was so warm and enthusiastic. Lady Wang's mouth fell open. Why did she treat Feng Wu so differently? Feng Wu didn't deserve it. However, Feng Wu didn't come out to greet Lady Northern Feng, but only called out from the stairs. Your ladyship, come up here. Chapter 687, Gifts of Nature. Go over there. What was this Feng Wu thinking? Lady Wang couldn't understand what Lady Northern Feng saw in that girl. Was Feng Wu not afraid of offending Lady Northern Feng? As a matter of fact, Lady Northern Feng wasn't offended at all. She went up to Feng Wu cheerfully and took her hand. Xiao Wu, you're so amazing. That medicine. Lady Northern Feng then leaned over and whispered something in Feng Wu's ear. Feng Wu smiled. That's great. It means the energy is flowing again inside your body. Please keep taking the medicine and I'll write you a new prescription in a month's time. I'll make sure you're thoroughly cured. Lady Northern Feng was elated. I liked the sound of that. Only those who had suffered from a disease before understood the importance of good health. Lady Northern Feng then shifted her gaze to Feng Wu's mother. One look and Lady Northern Feng was stunned. Oh God! Lady Northern Feng cried out. She had met Feng Wu's mother once 5 years ago. But after 5 years, the lady looked exactly the same. With a 13-year-old daughter, the beautiful lady still looked like an 18-year-old. No one could tell that she and Feng Wu were mother and daughter. They were like sisters. So beautiful. All words failed Lady Northern Feng. Lady Northern Feng had always had a thing for beautiful people, or she wouldn't have wanted to take Feng Wu back home when she was little. She couldn't stop admiring the lady's beauty. She's so beautiful. I can't believe my eyes. The beautiful lady wore little makeup today, which only added to her natural beauty. She looked as splendid as the stars. Even Lady Northern Feng was infatuated. Imagine how a man would react. I'm so ashamed of my ungainly appearance. Lady Northern Feng shook her head. Mrs. Ning felt the same. She touched her face involuntarily. She and Lady Northern Feng used the most expensive makeup and ate the best food, but time had still left its mark on their faces. However, Feng Wu's mother seemed to remain 18 forever. Lady Wang snorted inwardly. Lady Northern Feng might seem so enthusiastic, but she was still jealous of Feng Wu's mother. No woman could be magnanimous when it came to other beautiful women. However, Lady Northern Feng only took Feng Wu's hand. Xiao Wu, tell me, what did you do to help your mother stay this young? I'm your godmother now, so don't keep any secrets from me. Feng Wu chuckled. My mother hasn't agreed yet. Lady Northern Feng turned to the beautiful lady right away. The beautiful lady was essentially a 5-year-old girl, and there was no way she could handle Lady Northern Feng. Before long, she gave her consent. Xiao Wu, see? Your beautiful mother said yes, which makes you my goddaughter. Now, spill the secret. Lady Northern Feng patted Xiao Wu on the head. Tell me everything. Feng Wu chuckled. Well, my mum is blessed with natural beauty. She's got great skin and... Fine. We know all that. Your mother is the most beautiful woman in the Junwu Empire. No one is questioning that. Lady Northern Feng smiled bitterly. Tell us about the rejuvenating bit. That's a long story, Feng Wu said. First of all, one has to have a young mind, and my mum is naturally gifted in that respect. Lady Northern Feng gave her a wry smile. Chapter 688, The Crown Prince in Action. The supplements only came afterward, said Feng Wu. But the last batch I made has been used up. I'll send you a bottle when I have the next batch. That's great. Lady Northern Feng took Feng Wu's hands in excitement. She trusted fully in Feng Wu's medical skills and would believe anything Feng Wu said. I'll take a bottle, too. Xiao Wu, don't forget your aunt, Mrs. Ning said in excitement. Feng Wu's beautiful mother was actually called Xuanji and was known as Lady Xuanji in the empire. Amazed by Lady Xuanji's stunning beauty, both Mrs. Ning and Lady Northern Feng wanted Feng Wu to make those rejuvenating pills for them right away. But Feng Wu knew better than anyone else that her mother was a special case. She would remain this young with or without the rejuvenating pills. Feng Wu would wonder from time to time where exactly her mother came from. She simply had so many secrets. Seeing how friendly Lady Northern Feng and the other 3 women were, Lady Wang was vexed. Lady Wang had thought that Lady Northern Feng would lose her temper, but she got along much better with the others than Lady Wang had expected. The Crown Prince's residence. Staring at Feng Sun, Jun Linyuan frowned. The lake had frozen over, but Feng III didn't even notice. He looked at Jun Linyuan with teary eyes and said in an agitated tone, Boss Jun. Help me. You've got to help me this time. Help you? The crown prince's lips curled into a crooked smile. With what? Qiuling Yuan's voice sounded ominous. However, Feng Sun was too absorbed in his thoughts to notice. He pleaded with his eyes. Boss Jun, you're the only one I can count on now. Is that so? There was no warmth in Qiuling Yuan's eyes. You know what my mum's like. She was spoiled by Her Majesty, the Empress Dowager, and she has a vile temper. When she gets stubborn, even my dad has to compromise at times, not to mention myself. Feng Sun darted another pleading look at Qiuling Yuan. However, Qiuling Yuan remained unmoved and there was no emotion in his eyes. Of all the girls out there, why did my mum have to pick Feng Sun as her goddaughter? Did she think about my needs before she made the decision? Does she still remember that I'm her son? Feng Sun whined. Qiuling Yuan snorted. Why did she have to mention the goddaughter thing, instead of proposing a marriage? I can't believe it. After he was done complaining, Feng Sun turned to Qiuling Yuan with sparkling eyes. Boss Jun, you have to help me. You're the only one that can change my mum's mind now. Qiuling Yuan glanced at Feng Sun. Change her mind? That's right. Feng Sun smacked the table. A goddaughter in families like ours is as good as a real daughter. If I let my mum have her way, I'll never be able to marry little Feng Wu. Qiuling Yuan thought to himself, that's exactly what I'm hoping for. Feng Sun had no idea of what was going on in Qiuling Yuan's head. Seeing that the crown prince's face had darkened, he pleaded, Boss Jun, please help me just this once. I'll do anything. I know you don't like little Feng Wu, but I do. Boss Jun, please come with me and stop my mother. We're running out of time here. Feng Sun was so worried. Qiuling Yuan slowly rose to his feet. What's wrong with having a sister? There's nothing right about it. Feng Sun jumped to his feet. I won't be able to marry her and other people will ridicule her if she can't get a husband. Qiuling Yuan said, no, she'll get a husband. But she won't get anyone better than me and the girls out there are so snobbish that they'll definitely laugh at her. Darting a look at Qiuling Yuan, Feng Sun mumbled, it's not like you're going to marry her. Chapter 689, To the Feng Clan. Qiuling Yuan was speechless. Boss Jun. Qiuling Yuan headed for the door before Feng Sun could say another word. Boss Jun, where are you going? The Feng clan. Yes. Feng Sun liked the sound of that. He was thrilled. He knew it. He knew it. Boss Jun was the best. In the Feng manor. Feng Yanfeng had come back as summoned. And his first reaction was that the Ning family wanted Feng Lu as their daughter-in-law. Lady Northern Feng is in Fallen Star Yard at the moment, the steward informed Feng Yanfeng. What? Feng Yanfeng was confused. If the Ning family wanted Feng Lu, what was Lady Northern Feng doing in Fallen Star Yard? But Lady Northern Feng was too important a figure for Feng Yanfeng to neglect, and he headed for Fallen Star Yard in a hurry. In Fallen Star Yard, Lady Northern Feng and Mrs. Ning stood by Feng Wu and Lady Xuanji, and the four women chatted amicably. Lady Wang and Feng Lu, on the other hand, had been left on the side. The mother and daughter had made a few attempts to leave. After all, it was too embarrassing to linger. But Lady Northern Feng wouldn't let them. Lady Northern Feng rolled her eyes as soon as Lady Wang asked for permission to leave. Oh my, I see that the lady of the family is too busy to keep us company. What else could Lady Wang do but stay there with an ingratiating smile on her face? While the four women chatted happily, Lady Wang gritted her teeth so hard that she thought they were going to break. It was the longest afternoon in Lady Wang's life, so long that she thought she was going to have a nervous breakdown. Soon, footsteps came from outside. Feng Yanfeng pushed the door open. Master, Lady Wang's face lit up at the sight of Feng Yanfeng. Tears welled up in her eyes and she looked like the most pitiful kitten. Lady Northern Feng didn't like Lady Wang's reaction at all. Feng Yanfeng saw Lady Wang's tears, but he still brushed his wife aside and went straight up to Lady Northern Feng to greet her. Of course he had to do that, she was the wife of the Northern Feng general and had a close relationship with the royal family. The look on Lady Northern Feng's face changed again as soon as Feng Yanfeng walked in. The friendly smile disappeared, replaced by an arrogant look. She gave Feng Yanfeng an unhurried glance, then said indifferently, "Master Feng, I know you're a busy man and I didn't want to trouble you. But according to your wife, you're the one to make the final decision, so I had to invite you over." She sounded unusually polite, which scared Feng Yanfeng out of his wits. His legs almost gave way. Lady Northern Feng had never been known for being easy to get along with. She was an unpredictable woman. She would share her house with those she liked, but when she didn't like someone, she wouldn't hesitate to show it right away. Judging by that nonchalant tone, he could tell that Lady Northern Feng was displeased. Feng Yanfeng bowed and smiled obsequiously. "Lady Northern Feng, you flatter me. One word from you and I won't hesitate to go through fire and water for you." "There's no fire or water." Lady Northern Feng slowly put down her cup, dabbed her lips with a handkerchief, then said quietly, "Northern Feng Mansion wants to claim a goddaughter from your clan and your wife here is really reluctant. She wouldn't say yes until she heard your opinion. So, what do you say?" Still that tone. Feng Yanfeng felt like kneeling down. So, Lady Northern Feng wanted to claim Feng Lu as her goddaughter, right? That way, Feng Lu would have status adequate enough for her to marry Ning Chenxi. The lady was doing the Ning family a favor. Feng Yanfeng was over the moon. Yes. Yes, of course. Chapter 690, Annulment. Lady Wang grabbed Feng Yanfeng's wrist and shot him warning glances repeatedly. Don't say yes. Feng Wu would be even more arrogant when she became a princess of Northern Feng Mansion. Feng Yanfeng didn't even look at Lady Wang. A goddaughter? As long as it could benefit his career, he wouldn't hesitate to give away all his daughters to Northern Feng Mansion. Hence, Feng Yanfeng smiled. I'm so glad that your ladyship finds Lu Er tolerable. It's such a blessing for her. Lu Er, come here and greet your godmother. With Northern Feng Mansion as his patron, he would have a meteoric rise. Feng Yanfeng was thrilled. No wonder the fortune tellers had been telling him that Feng Lu was a lucky girl. She really was. What Feng Lu? Lady Northern Feng stared at Feng Yanfeng. Ha! Feng Yanfeng looked back at Lady Northern Feng in bewilderment. Lady Northern Feng stared at Feng Yanfeng in disbelief. Why would I want a daughter like Feng Lu? I want a peaceful life, thank you. Ha! Feng Yanfeng was baffled. Lady Northern Feng didn't stop there. She now saw how abominable this family was. And Lady Northern Feng never held anything back. She didn't like this first branch of the Feng clan and she wasn't shy about it. She began with her usual opening line. Master Feng, I need to tell you something, no offense. Feng Yanfeng sighed inwardly. He was sure he would be offended and he wished Lady Northern Feng would just stop talking. But Lady Northern Feng always needed to speak her mind and the other party was always offended. Master Feng, if you ask me, marry Feng Lu to your worst enemy. She definitely has the potential to break a family apart and ruin everything. That way, you can have your revenge. Feng Yanfeng's face darkened. Your ladyship, what's that supposed to mean? Is the Ning family going to annul the engagement now? Feng Yanfeng was no fool. He could tell that Lady Northern Feng didn't like Feng Lu. She was telling him that Feng Lu was a troublemaker that would bring misfortune to her future husband. Annul the engagement? Mrs. Ning stepped forward with a smile. When did my son get engaged to your daughter? Why haven't I heard about it? But this turn of events was so sudden that Feng Yanfeng was taken by surprise. Hasn't your family been asking for Feng Lu's hand repeatedly? You even had Lord Wuan act as a matchmaker. Feng Yanfeng glanced at Lady Wang with a frown. How had this happened? The other day, Feng Yanfeng thought Feng Lu was first in the exam and that even His Royal Highness had his eye on Feng Lu. As a result, he had tactfully turned Lord Wuan down. As it turned out, His Royal Highness wasn't interested at all. Therefore, Feng Yanfeng still wanted Feng Lu to marry into the Ning family, so that he could become acquainted with Northern Feng Mansion. But, well, I guess I need to thank you, Master Feng. If you hadn't turned Lord Wuan down, my family would be in a difficult spot now. It would have been a disaster for us. Mrs. Ning snorted. You people, Feng Yanfeng frowned. He was the minister of the Ministry of Official Personnel and a second-ranked official in charge of the promotion of all the government officials of the empire. He was an influential figure. He wasn't going to just stand here and let two women point their fingers at him. Lady Northern Feng smirked. Mrs. Feng, Feng Lu, I would come clean if I were you. Gossiping is really not my thing. Chapter 691, Not Helping. Fine, you don't gossip. You're just forcing me to confess. Clenching her fists, Feng Lu wanted to cry again. But Lady Northern Feng was simply too intimidating. Under her intense gaze, Feng Lu had no choice but to tell everyone how she had lied in Wanping town. There were a lot of tears. With Lady Northern Feng on the side, Feng Lu couldn't make excuses for herself. Whenever she tried, Lady Northern Feng would shoot a murderous look at her. After hearing the truth, Feng Yanfeng almost cried. What kind of idiot was this Feng Lu? Why didn't she tell him before this? He wouldn't have been so proud if she had. He would have agreed to the marriage proposal, and when the Ning family wanted out, well, they would have had to pay to do so. But now it was too late for anything. Feng Yanfeng wanted to stomp his foot in frustration. Seeing the look on Feng Yanfeng's face, Feng Wu sneered. To Feng Yanfeng, everything was about his personal gain, and even his own daughter wasn't exempt from that. She knew that Feng Yanfeng had to be considering her a much more important chess piece than Feng Lu now. She was right. After making Feng Lu confess her sin, Lady Northern Feng said in an indifferent tone, Anyway, Master Feng, I'm going to claim Feng Wu as my goddaughter, and your wife said I needed your consent. So, are you going to give your consent or not? That tone again. Of course Feng Yanfeng wouldn't dare say no. Moreover, this would be a great opportunity for him to become familiar with Northern Feng Mansion. Feng Yanfeng would have to be an idiot to say no. Of course yes. Feng Yanfeng smiled obsequiously. Feng Wu smiled. What yes? I won't accept it. Just then, an angry voice rang out from up on the wall. Feng Sun jumped down, as if he was ready to bite someone's nose off. Smack! Lady Northern Feng smacked him on the head. Shut up! Feng Sun pleaded, Mother. Lady Northern Feng snapped, You have no say in this. Feng Sun then turned his pleading eyes in the direction of the wall. Feng Wu followed his gaze in bewilderment. Without making a sound, Junling Yuan's imposing figure appeared. He was as unapproachable as an iceberg, and even his aura said, off limits. Feng was behind him as usual. Your Royal Highness. Everyone was surprised to see Jun Linyuan here. Feng Yanfeng rushed over and greeted the Crown Prince with an ingratiating smile. His eyes sparkled. The Crown Prince was in his home. Feng Yanfeng couldn't believe his eyes. Feng Sun kept tipping Jun Linyuan the wink, so hard that his eyelid was going to cramp. Aunt, Jun Linyuan greeted Lady Northern Feng. Lady Northern Feng had been raised by the Empress Dowager herself. Jun Linyuan, who had lost his mother when he was little, had grown up in the Empress Dowager's Qiuling palace as well. That was to say, Lady Northern Feng used to take care of Jun Linyuan when he was a little boy. Lady Northern Feng was glad to see Jun Linyuan. Jun, what are you doing here? Ah Sun dragged you into this, didn't he? I'm warning you, don't help him. He's so spoiled, he's not getting what he wants this time. Jun Linyuan darted a glance at Feng Sun. Hear that? My aunt has made up her mind. It's not that I don't want to help you. I just can't. Feng Sun's heart sank. Chapter 692, Say thank you to your cousin June. No. Have you forgotten who you are? You're the invincible June Linyuan. Stomp your foot and an earthquake will shake up the Junwu Empire. My mum might kick me around, but she won't do that to you. Feng Sun pleaded with his eyes. Boss June. Help me. You're the crown prince. June Linyuan turned to Lady Northern Feng. Aunt, you're. June, look, isn't Xiaowu great? Lady Northern Feng grinned. I'm going to have a new goddaughter. Aren't you happy for me? June Linyuan cleared his throat. As long as you're happy, Aunt. Feng Sun kept silent. Lady Northern Feng chuckled. I'm happy. I'm so happy. Feng Sun glared at June Linyuan. He had brought Boss June all the way here to stop this from happening, but what happened to his authority? Feng Sun stared so hard that his eyelids began to twitch, but June Linyuan seemed to be in a great mood as he chatted happily with Lady Northern Feng. Seeing this, Feng Yanfeng found Lady Northern Feng even more impressive. Well, since Miss Feng Wu is your Royal Highness's cousin now, how about a gift? As considerate as he always was, Feng took the hint as soon as June Linyuan darted a look at his own jade pendant. It was a gift from Master Dugu of Wandering Temple. Not only had it been blessed, His Royal Highness's name was also inscribed on it. It would help her cultivation tremendously. June Linyuan was waiting for that line. Taking off the pendant, he tossed it to Feng Wu. There. Wow! Everyone in the room was excited. It was a gift from His Royal Highness. Although he only did it for Lady Northern Feng's sake, it was still a great honor for Feng Wu. Feng Wu wasn't going to take June Linyuan's gift, not to mention that he had tossed it at her. Did he take her for a beggar or something? She was about to throw it back when she felt a cool sensation. A mild streak of spiritual essence ran all the way from her hand to her dantian. Soon, Feng Wu felt her dantian fill up. This was great for her cultivation. Feng Wu was elated. Feng Sun stared at Feng Wu. Weren't you all mean to Boss June and wanted to stay away from him? Give it back. Where's your honor? However, to his frustration, Feng Wu held the jade pendant with both hands and gave June Linyuan a sweet smile. Thank you, Your Royal Highness. Feng Sun kept silent. Lady Northern Feng added, You should say, thank you, Cousin June. Feng Sun shouted, No. I don't want her as my sister. I don't. Lady Wang and Feng Lu were roused from their astonishment. The mother and daughter had been overwhelmed by jealousy when they saw the gift His Royal Highness gave Feng Wu. All those were supposed to be Feng Lu's. However, they were thrilled to hear Feng Sun's protest. So what if Lady Northern Feng liked Feng Wu? Feng Sun didn't. He would bully Feng Wu so much that she would live a miserable life. Grabbing Feng Sun by his ear, Lady Northern Feng said, Why not? Speak. Give me a good reason or I'll rip your ear off. Mum, that hurts. Say it. Lady Northern Feng snapped. Sobbed. Feng Sun was so embarrassed. How was he supposed to say it in front of so many people? Hence, he murmured something. Chapter 693, Boss June. You betrayed me. What? Can't hear you. Lady Northern Feng frowned. Feng Sun raised his voice a tiny bit. What? Man up and say it out loud. Lady Northern Feng smacked Feng Sun on the head. Poor young Lord Feng. His mother was the only person in this world that could intimidate him like this. I said I want to marry Feng Wu. Feng Sun finally summoned up his courage and shouted out those words. That astonished everyone. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Nor did Lady Northern Feng. The rest of the crowd was equally silent. Lady Wang, Feng Yanfeng, and Feng Lu were scared out of their wits. Young Lord Feng of Northern Feng Mansion wanted to marry Feng Wu, as in that failure Wu. Lady Northern Feng was dumbfounded. This brat wanted to marry Feng Wu. Why didn't he say so before? She wouldn't have gone to all this trouble to claim a goddaughter if she had known. She would have to try to think of a way to make Feng Wu her daughter-in-law. Why her? Jun Linyuan turned his cold gaze on Feng Sun. I. That reminded Lady Northern Feng, that was right. The silly boy never acted like he actually liked the girl. What was he up to? It wasn't that Lady Northern Feng didn't trust her son. It was just that Feng Sun had done too many silly things. Speak. No one will marry her if I don't. Feng Sun yelled at the top of his lungs. Smack! Lady Northern Feng smacked Feng Sun hard on the forehead and he almost fell to the floor. Lady Northern Feng was vexed. Why on earth did he say that? Little Feng Wu was so pretty, so smart, and so amazing. Who wouldn't want to marry her? Little Feng Wu is crippled and no good family would want her. At least, no one more talented or more influential than me would want to marry her. I'm her best choice. Feng Sun yelled. For a moment, Lady Northern Feng actually thought Feng Sun made sense. But then, Jun Linyuan casually commented, "Are you sure you're not going to lose interest in her after 2 days?" Feng Sun stared at Jun Linyuan in disbelief. Boss Jun. I didn't bring you here to undermine my plan. However, Lady Northern Feng flared up at those words. Smack! She smacked Feng Sun on the head again. Arg! That really hurt. Feng Sun almost choked. His head was swimming and he could see stars. Lady Northern Feng was genuinely angry. Feng Sun. I didn't say anything when you messed with other girls, but stay away from my Xiao Wu. She's my daughter and that's my final verdict. Jun Linyuan nodded. Feng Sun really should do something about his vice. Feng Sun glared at Jun Linyuan. Lady Northern Feng nodded at Jun Linyuan. Jun, you're such a good boy, not like that brat Sun. Thanks to him, my lifespan has been shortened by at least a few years. I can keep an eye on him when he's at home, but you'll have to do that job for me when he goes out. Don't let him bully my Xiao Wu. Jun Linyuan nodded. Of course, Aunt. Feng Sun glared at Jun Linyuan. Lady Northern Feng was elated and added, no inappropriate thoughts about Xiao Wu either. Jun Linyuan had never been this obedient. Whatever you say, Aunt. Feng Sun glared at Jun Linyuan. He had never known that Boss Jun could be this docile. Chapter 694, I Have a Sister. Lady Northern Feng was pleased, for she knew how reliable Jun Linyuan was. When he said yes, Feng Sun had no chance whatsoever. She then shot a warning glance at Feng Sun. She's your sister from now on, treat her like one. I'm only going to say it once. Feng Sun kept silent. Feng Yanfeng didn't have any doubts now. For some unknown reason, Lady Northern Feng just liked Feng Wu so much. Even His Royal Highness acted rather friendly. Fearing that this was going to turn into another fiasco like the incident with Feng Lu, Feng Yanfeng shouted his command at Feng Wu. Pour her ladyship some tea, kneel, and greet your godmother. Feng Wu gave Feng Yanfeng a half-smile. Her uncle was really desperate. Lady Northern Feng threw a dirty look at Feng Yanfeng, then waved him off. There's no need to rush. She's going to be sure Yaren's one daughter and it'll be a formal ceremony. She then turned to Feng Wu with a smile. Good girl. I'll pick an auspicious day, invite lots of guests, and throw you a big party. No one will ever look down on you again. That change in her attitude. Feng Yanfeng was speechless. The Crown Prince's residence. Feng Sun followed Jun Linyuan back to the residence, but he wouldn't stop nagging. Why? I don't understand. Boss June, why did you turn your back on me? Shouldn't you be on my side? I don't get it. I'm so mad. Ah. Feng Sun wouldn't stop complaining and he had the biggest frown on his face. June Linyuan darted him a glance in resignation. He suddenly asked, why did my aunt want Feng Wu as her goddaughter? Feng Sun snorted. You know how much my mum likes pretty people. Little Feng Wu has always been so good-looking and my mum has had this idea for years. She finally got what she wanted. Humph. June Linyuan was speechless. Come to think of it, I really need to thank little Feng Wu this time. Lying down on a bench by the pool with his hands behind his head, Feng Sun said in a disgruntled voice, Mum was sick and it was quite severe. Little Feng Wu saved her life. For that alone, I need to thank her. I've made up my mind. Feng Sun bounced off the bench all of a sudden and looked refreshed. What? I'll protect little Feng Wu with my life. Feng Sun clenched his fists. I'm her brother now. Humph. Anyone try to do anything to her, and I'll break their leg. June Linyuan was speechless. Feng cleared his throat. Feng Sun looked at Feng in bewilderment. Do you not feel well? Feng didn't know what to say. His throat was fine, but he couldn't say the same about this silly teenager's life. Feng Sun had no idea whom he had offended with those words. He was just so happy all of a sudden. Sitting there, he couldn't stop grinning. And that look on his face gave the other the creeps. Luckily, he was dealing with the crown prince. June Linyuan rolled his eyes at Feng Sun. What are you doing? Feng Sun guffawed. June Linyuan was speechless. Boss June, you know what? Feng Sun suddenly turned around and looked at June Linyuan in excitement. His eyes sparkled. I have a sister. Ha ha ha, I have a sister. June Linyuan was speechless. Excuse me? What happened to that person who would rather die than have a sister? June Linyuan sighed. I see. Chapter 695, My sister is the best. I have a sister now. Feng Sun repeated. June Linyuan rolled his eyes. I have those, too. Thanks to his virile father, June Linyuan had a lot of sisters. It's not the same. Feng Sun said proudly. My sister's beautiful. Are your sisters as pretty as mine? The corner of June Linyuan's mouth twitched. With Feng Wu as his sister, Feng Sun suddenly felt on top of the world. Because, for once, he was better than June Linyuan in something. OMG. Feng III said proudly, my sister is really smart. She was first in the written exam. Can your sisters do that? June Linyuan was speechless. Putting his hands behind his back, Feng Sun stuck out his chest. My sister is a great doctor. And she knows formations. And once Feng Sun started showing off, he wasn't going to stop. His grin was so wide that all his white teeth were showing. And your sister is an excellent chiropractor, too, thought June Linyuan. Ha ha ha, Feng Sun was still laughing when he rose to his feet and headed out. Where are you going? I'm going to tell Xian Yi the good news. Ha ha ha. I have a sister now. Feng Sun walked off after that. June Linyuan was speechless. He couldn't for the life of him figure out how could someone who had been so against having a sister embrace the idea so quickly. But Feng Sun had always been unpredictable like that, and June Linyuan was long used to it. The Feng clan. After the guests left, Lady Wang's and Feng Lu's faces were livid. Feng Wu. What did you do? Feng Lu bellowed at Feng Wu as soon as Lady Northern Feng was gone. The Ning family doesn't want me now and Lady Northern Feng wants you as her daughter. You must have done something. Feng Wu wanted to roll her eyes at Feng Lu. My dear sister, didn't you tell everyone what you did? Do I need to repeat everything? It's not that. Feng Lu was furious. You must have done something behind my back, or Lady Northern Feng would never like you so much. Tell me. Have you been saying bad things about me behind my back? Feng Wu snorted. You've done enough bad things yourself. You don't need my help for that. You, Feng Lu burst into a fury. She had lost everything and Feng Wu had more than she could ever have hoped for. The change in their comparative status was what Feng Lu found the most unacceptable. After all, she was used to looking down on Feng Wu in such a condescending manner. Shut up. Feng Yanfeng glared at Feng Lu. Dad, it's all Feng Wu's fault. She's a dash. However, Feng Yanfeng raised his hand before Feng Lu could finish. Smack! He slapped Feng Lu, loud and clear. You hit me, how could you hit me? Dad, I'm your daughter, not her. Feng Lu screamed aggrievedly. Feng Wu felt sorry for Feng Lu. The poor kid still didn't understand. To Feng Yanfeng, familial love was pointless. All he cared about was who could be useful for his future career. And his kindness was reserved for the useful people only. Now that Feng Wu was about to become a member of Northern Feng Mansion, Feng Yanfeng would never let anything happen to her. Feng Wu sighed inwardly. That godmother was very worthwhile. It had only been a couple of months since they got back from Northern Border City. Back then, she had still been too weak to protect her family and Lady Wang had held all the advantages. That woman had looked down upon them. However, a couple of months later,